either live by the gun or you die by the sword.
Welcome to The Good, the Bad, and the Weird. I'm Nicho.
And I'm Chris.
And we are entering that magical season today.
Yes.
The day before Hallmark has decided that you are supposed to profess your love to everyone.
Time for chocolate and candy.
We are doing a Valentine's Day anti-love story special.
Yes.
We are doing Ready or Not.
The delightful comedy horror film.
Yes. Up front, I do have to give a big shout out to my buddy Sugi.
Yes.
Without him, I would not have known about this movie, nor would it have come to my mind for what we were going to do on a Valentine's Day movie, because we did talk about romance movies.
We did. We were thinking like we were going to rip Hallmark a new one. This is much better.
Much, much better. And I have him all to thank for that, as well as, he is honestly the reason my chiller reviews have kept going during the pandemic. He's the one who got me back into classic horror franchises, so.
Yep, and I had forgotten I wanted to see Ready or Not until he recommended it, so thanks for bringing it back up.
Yep. So if you get a chance, check out SugiLogic on Twitch. He is a delight to watch.
Yes.
He's a very bubbly person.
Yes.
And we end up talking about movies a lot on his stream, so yeah, he's
good time to hang out.
Good guy. So Ready or Not is a 2019 film.
It is.
I
remember the commercials coming out for it, and then immediately it like falling off the everyone's talk record.
Yeah, this is about, actually, no, the year before is when I really stopped watching trailers, so like I fell out of like what was coming up and stuff.
Fair.
And so, yeah, I think Sugi recommended it to me late last year sometime. Or, no, No, it was 2019. He recommended it to me in 2019. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a horror comedy.
Yes. It's in the horror genre. It's a little bit on the slight gory side. There's plenty of blood, plenty of stabbing, lots of shooting.
Yep.
That sort of style.
Also, the reason Sugi suggested it's part of what's called the Sugi collection, which basically means anything starring Samara Weaving.
Fair. Who is carrying this goddamn movie on her back.
Oh, yeah.
Her acting in this I thought was really great. I loved it. I wouldn't say anyone is bad in this movie, but this movie for me promised a whole lot, because like, satanic rituals. Hell yes.
Yes.
That's one of our favorite genres. Murder family, of course. Love that genre as well. A stupid gore movie, again, one of my favorites. And then we're throwing in board games, which we've already talked about how much I love those. So like, there was a lot of promise wrapped up in this movie, and we'll go through why, but like, it was so close. And then there's just bits that I can't let go.
Yeah. So, before we really get into it, Chris, what are we drinking today?
Well, today you made us fancy giant ice cubes so that we can float our whiskey and feel like fancy people.
Yes, drinking before noon.
Drinking before noon. It's okay. We have stuff to do this today.
Fancy if you're rich, trashy if you're poor.
Yeah, I guess so. I think
actually kind of fitting for this movie.
Yes, this movie is very reminiscent of a slightly too filled glass of whiskey and an ice cube.
Prost.
Gotta love an ice cube on the coldest day of the year.
Yes. Side note, it is wild turkey.
Ah, yeah. Delicious.
Bourbon. So, before getting into the movie itself, I do want to acknowledge some of my sources from this. Yeah. So the DVD actually has a fair bit of commentary to it.
Yeah, it was actually nice.
The commentary over the film is featuring leading actress Samara Weaving, as well as directors Matt Bentinelli, Open, and Tyler Gillette.
Yes.
Of the collective Radio Silence. It was actually written by Guy Busick and R. Christopher Murphy, and it was written based on a Faustian bargain, but with the question of what would future generations think, or how would it adapt to their time if the original rituals were kind of muddled in history, as many rituals are.
Yes.
A little bit of side tangential stuff that I kind of went into.
Mm-hmm.
For those who are unfamiliar with what a Faustian bargain is, they are deals with the devil.
Yep. Think Crossroads style.
Yep. With the term actually deriving from, or the term Faustian, stemming from the protagonist of the classic German legend named Faust.
Yes.
Which there's a lot more to it than I actually thought. So this is why I'm bringing it up, because I thought it was kind of interesting.
It really is.
So I learned that this legend is actually based off Johann Georg Faust, a German internet alchemist, astrologer, and magician who lived from, either was born in 1480 or 1466 and lived till 1541 during the German Renaissance.
Oh, so he was a bad alchemist because he died. Get it?
Yes, okay. You're supposed to try and live forever. Depends on what alchemy you're trying to find, Chris.
Alchemy jokes.
Yes. And so these kinds of deals are normally tragic consequences for the deal maker. Mm-hmm. Think Portrait of Dorian Gray or Belladonna of Sadness.
Yeah. It's always, self-fulfilling prophecy in a way.
Yes. And of the many retellings or adaptations of this type of story, the only one that I am really super familiar with is Faust by F.W. Murnau.
Sure.
From 1926, which I watched for my last 31 days of Halloween.
Yeah.
So yeah, just a little bit of side tangent history that doesn't necessarily equate to this movie, but it could have. It could have.
The roots are there.
The roots are there, exactly. Yeah. And so, a little bit of backstory on Radio Silence, who originally they were not selected during the open casting for directors, but they ended up coming back to the producers with their concept art and walkthroughs of how they wanted to do the film, and they realized, okay, these are the guys for the role.
Yeah.
This is what we'll do. I did not know this. Radio Silence's other works of note that I personally am familiar with are VHS and Southbound.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Very, very similar style now that you...
Yeah, now once you see it, yeah.
As well, the directors of Ready or Not are currently selected to be the directors of the 5th Scream movie. So,
you know what? Why not?
Yeah. I kind of have hopes for this movie.
I do too. Maybe it'll roll back around.
Yeah. But other than that, most of my other sources were Wikipedia for some of the post thoughts. Mm-hmm. Just some little side tangents of what I went into. And then also just various commentary through the costume designers, producers, and a bunch of people involved in the film.
Yep.
So, ready or not?
Ready or not.
Let's begin. So, the movie actually begins with Gambit Game.
Yes.
A board game as it pans over a bunch of other board games in a fancy hall.
Yes.
Radio Silence described wanting a feeling of old world glow to the house.
They achieved that with a shit ton of candles.
I'll get into that in a minute. Or in a little bit.
Yes.
They also... All these games were completely made from scratch.
Yes.
There were 200 titles made, and through the vetting process to make sure they weren't copyright infringements or...
Because, that would take for a while.
Actually working. Only 8 really made it.
Yeah.
But they're all so good because, they all have some type of, occult...
They're all a little punny.
Yeah. They're plays cute on original current board games.
Yeah, they're cute. I will say that the only kind of fun bit to them is, and those of you who have a board game family will know what I mean. Their board games all sit kind of cutely on the shelf. Labels are all nice and you can see them, and they all kind of have a general feel where they all go together in this mythical demon house.
The La Domas family.
This family was very particular about their board games because none of my board games are even in the same shape of box. None of them are the same color, and half of them don't have names on them. They have little hands on them, or like smiling faces, or whatever a brain that's made out of Play-Doh is supposed to look like. So like, good job, family, on picking board games that only match your aesthetic.
Yeah. No, I actually really appreciate it just because it's kind of a weird opening.
It is. It is a little... Like, it's almost not necessary, but it does feel, like, nice.
Yeah, because it immediately brings us into the thought that there's a game coming.
Yeah.
Because immediately after this, we're shown 2 children running and hiding.
Yes.
And...
2 slightly creepy children.
Yeah, it's a weird juxtaposition from, like, this old-timey, like, old board game, almost museum-like.
Yeah, museum-y. Yeah.
To children running from what we don't know yet.
And the whole house the house plus the children together kind of gives a theater of the macabre background vibe without having any of the macabre stuff.
Yeah, because before, like, if you're going into this movie not knowing anything...
Other than, I mean, I guess the title, but...
I mean, that's basically what I went into.
Sure.
But, like, it either has a feeling of paranormal or those, like, orphanage movies.
Ah, the good old orphanage movies.
Yes.
Yeah, but it does. It totally does.
Yeah. And so we learn that the older brother is very protective of the younger brother, who hides him in a closet, like kids do.
Yep.
And right after he hides him, a man appears begging for help.
Yes. Who
is immediately shot by a bunch of people in masks, while...
gross masks.
A woman named Eileen screams in the back.
Yes.
Side note, those masks are similar to an episode of The Twilight Zone.
Yes. I was wondering if anyone else, like, remembers Twilight Zone episodes anymore, but yeah.
I mean, I haven't gotten into it yet. I found that on IMDb trivia page.
Gotcha.
I'm slowly going through The Twilight Zone. I'm just horrible with TV shows.
That and Twilight Zone, while really good, is a little difficult to binge, just because, like, you really kind of want to digest each episode.
Well, and I also can't binge like your husband.
Oh man, that man can binge. Yeah. Yeah, fair.
Yeah, we have a lot to talk about in the next husband
he
review.
Got through so much stuff in like 3 days. It's amazing.
I don't get it.
I don't either.
And so, as this man is shot and carried away with Eileen screaming in the back, we skip 30 years later. And we have a new bride practicing her vows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do appreciate that the entire movie's palette tone remains muted, even in her, like, happy wedding scenes, where it's like, normally this would be shot with, like, a little bit overexposed, bright white, with, like, blue and greens in the backgrounds to, like, balance out and bring color and pop. This one, everything's just a little bit brown.
Well, and I think that's, very much goes back to, Radio Silence's desire to have that old world glow.
It definitely
where it's
has
very
that
subdued. It's not modern day.
It almost
has to have that punch of color somewhere.
It's close to feeling tintypey in like the old tintype photographs without being quite as muted.
That actually brought up a thought later on in the movie about the punch of color.
Yeah.
I'll bring that up in a minute.
Fair.
So I love this intro because when the groom enters, we quickly learn that Grace, played by Samara Weaving, is very much a fish out of water. She comes from a what's
foster home?
Foster home. That's the word I'm thinking of. I was thinking orphanage, but
we didn't go that cliche here.
No.
That would have almost been better.
But she's a fish out of water, having no real previously family in a not super close, rich, and dysfunctional family.
Yes.
Weaving mentioned that she was actually really nervous about this monologue because it's the first thing you see her in this movie.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. And so, when the groom walks in, we get this weird pre-wedding jitters.
Yeah.
Because I didn't pick this up on the first time I watched it. Just because, like, going into it, I didn't know anything about the movie, who was involved, or who knew what. Their wedding jitters are for completely different reasons.
Yes. Yeah, this is the start to some of the loopholes that, like, I just can't quite get over for this movie. he gives her an out. He's like, you can leave. You can walk away right now. I'm giving you an out.
Or both of us can leave and we can live in sin forever.
Yeah. Sir, this is not an out. This is like me being like, hey, Nico, do you want to come over tomorrow? I'm giving you an out, though. You don't have to. And you're like, no, I'll come over, and then I murder you. You feel like how that's an important piece of the puzzle that I should have told you before you came over?
I feel like if you wanted to murder someone, that would be a fine way to do it, I guess.
But he doesn't want to murder her.
Yeah.
This movie makes it very clear that the spouses, in both instances that we watch, do not want the other person murdered. And yet, he's like, hey, by the way, I should inform you of my parents' satanic rituals. No, he's just like, God, we have to get married, otherwise we can't bone. Dang it.
Well, to be fair, I understand that from my side, because I kept hitting that I was interested in a lot of occult subjects. Just as, like, it's interesting stuff to read.
Yeah. And
I've started coming out a little bit more about that to people, and it has been off-putting to
fair amount. Fair, but this movie isn't taking place in the old-timey times.
Yeah, I think from the technology and stuff that, and the time frame they set in the movie, it's early to probably more later 2000s, but not later than 2009.
Yeah, which still, that's still well within the bubble of like, hey, we can just date forever. Mm-hmm. Like, no one said you had to get married.
Yeah.
So, first hiccup that I spent the entire movie going, you're an ass, sir.
Yes. No. I absolutely despise the husband.
I do too. Like, the rest of his family are also assholes, but I spend so much of my time watching murder mysteries where everyone's an asshole, and they all fall into the rest of the, like, general asshole, rich, weird family stereotypes.
Yeah.
Except for him. He's supposed to be the good person, and yet he fails massively in that role.
And we'll get to one of my favorite characters in this movie in a minute.
Yes.
So, with that, not only is it off to a bad start for you you specifically watching wise, the entire wedding is off to a rough start because the groom is seeing the bride before the wedding.
Yeah, I kind of wish that this movie had placed itself either in a slightly different time frame, like just far enough back that like it wouldn't necessarily change the story, but like enough for us to be like, oh, they're still holding on to old ideals.
Like if it had been set 30 years earlier.
Yeah, if it had been set 30 years earlier, or if they had made like a real effort to be like, oh, this is in a very like small town in the South, we're still very like live in the golden age sort of mindset.
Drinking sweet tea on my porch.
You can't date boys, you can't hold hands with boys, you can't look at boys. Like, if it had set itself up like that, I think a lot of my complaints, especially for him, especially for the husband character, I think would have been completely annihilated. But because they're like, nope, it's now times, and it's wherever you want it to be located. Think of an old-timey mansion. Where's that at? That's where it is.
Well, we are in an old-timey mansion, but modern times.
Old-timey mansion.
So, I actually like I actually prefer the more modern setting because it makes this weird juxtaposition between old rituals and traditions and what's actually changed in the world, and it's this weird contrast.
It's so close to, like, being a full, like, everyone can recognize it contrast, as opposed to, like, needing that little bit of info where the directors were wanting it to go. Yeah. Yeah. It's real close.
Yeah. And, also, side little tangent, I was curious where the superstition of, not seeing the groom and bride seeing each other before the wedding came from. Is not exactly where I thought it came from, or why it was done.
Is it because old-timey people used to lie about their portraits?
Somewhat like that, yes. According to Wikipedia, it originated in England, and it emerged from a time when arranged marriages were commonplace, and was practiced to ensure the groom would not go, or would go through with, or the groom would go through with the wedding, regardless of how the bride's-to-be identity or appearance looked.
Yeah, okay. There's a lot of fun history stories about this, because, you know, Snapchat filters and, like, face tuning are not new. Painters have been doing it for as long as we have been able to paint. And so there was a lot of different, like, royalty, princesses, duchesses, and, you know, people of the upper crust who needed to, like, be married into this, like, tiny, tiny circle of people. Well, if you look like you've got 2 cleft chins on your face, and...
Oh, yeah,
and
like,
if you don't look, like, stunning, why should the prince pick you? Well, what if we just paint you to look a little thinner? Like, what if we get rid of that monobrow?
Yeah, like that Spanish dude that they couldn't paint out the inbreeding in him.
Yeah, they couldn't paint out the inbreeding in him. Yeah, that he is the pinnacle of, like, oh man, I'm sure in real life that man like, oh dear. But, like, that's been happening forever, and it started off like, oh, I'll fix that blemish real quick. And then it, like, slowly just, I think, morphed into, like, that's not the same person.
Yeah, well,
But also, like, when you're trying to marry your own cousin, because royalty reasons, you don't want your cousin to be ugly, because heaven forbid your inbred children be ugly.
True.
You have to look at her sometimes. Like, twice a week.
Yeah, you have to at least make love once to conceive a child.
Theoretically.
Then you can pick the prettiest handmaids.
Yes, that is exactly what happened. And so, yeah, that's... And the same thing with the veil over the face for weddings. I think it's... Like, we're cutting it close here.
Old-timey sexism.
Yeah.
But, anywho, so... In comes the older brother, who is being obnoxious.
Yes.
Tells the bride that, again, it is not too late to flee. And
again, could have mentioned the whole murder thing.
Basically, the family's not good for her.
No, this is a bad fit.
Yeah.
Should have dated longer.
Groom gives her one more out. Side note of this transition, the garden that they're actually overlooking in the movie.
Beautiful garden.
Well, the one we're seeing from the window is not the one we transition to.
No, it's not.
The one that we transition to is on the other side of the house.
But you know what? That's just how it be sometimes.
Yep. And so now we are doing the pre-wedding photos, the get-together, the waiting around.
They're doing the whole wedding rigmarole. Like,
yep.
They're not skipping any of the steps.
Yeah, and what I actually like about this part is we quickly learn the family dynamics.
Yes, I do like this intro for the family.
Yes, we learn that the father does not approve of her.
He doesn't approve of anything.
The older brother and father do not get along.
Yeah, that would be an understatement.
Alex has not been in touch with the family for 2 years.
See,
I would say 2 years is a pretty long time to date.
It is, but, like, in 2 years, this man hasn't ever once been like, hey, by the way, my family's really into, like, we have a goat pit in our basement.
Yeah.
Like, I can understand some things not making it out. Like, hey, by the way, I have an aunt. We don't see her very often, but, like, she licks her fingers and then puts it in the dip at Thanksgiving. Like, that's one thing.
This sounds like an actual family member for you.
I'm not saying anything. But, like, that's one thing. Or, like, oh, I forgot to tell you about this great aunt that I have. She's gonna be here for this Thanksgiving. This is probably the only time you'll see her.
Yeah.
But, like, this is my mom. My mom has a murder pit in her basement. You don't feel like that's an important, like, thing to bring up at some point? Like, by the way, the reason why I don't talk to my parents is because they kill people.
Yeah.
I know there are people out there that have to deal with that shit. Don't undermine those people.
Yeah, exactly. And so, we also learned that Dan's wife married him, Dan the older brother.
Yeah.
I haven't actually said names of a lot of the people yet. But we don't
really care.
He mentions that they're trying to see if, Grace is marrying, Alex for the money. Like his wife did. She
did real hard. Yeah.
Yes.
She is in it for the cash.
Whereas creepy Aunt Eileen
I love creepy Aunt Eileen.
Chilling off in the corner.
I strive to be creepy Aunt Eileen when I'm older.
She's such
a frowny face.
So I was also thinking about it where like her age difference between like everyone else, she looks like she's aged so much more.
Oh, she does, yeah.
But at the same time, it's been 30 years, so like if she didn't get married till she was 30, she's in her 60s now.
Yes, and did you see how furrowed that brow was?
Yes.
The girl has given herself wrinkles.
She has given up on everything.
She has, and like, it's not just like she has like a sour face, like, because some people do. No, she is full, like, corners of her mouth are touching her jawline. Yes. Her eyebrows are in, like, the Grinch shape for eyebrows. This woman is trying to frown at all times.
Forcing herself to frown even when she's happy.
And, like, like, if she wasn't frowning, you'd be like, oh, she's kind of a cute old lady. She's fine. Like, she looks nice for a wedding. But no, that frown is there to make sure you understand that she is grumpy, and she is here to be grumpy, damn it.
She's there for tradition.
She's there for the candies and the champagne after this wedding.
Yes. And so we also learned that the mother-in-law was in a similar standing to that of Grace when she joined the family.
You know, she says that.
Yeah. Well, actually, for the most part, everyone else in the family besides, like, the original Ladomas family.
Yeah, that's true.
All seem to come from
somewhere else.
Yeah, lower, different kinds of backgrounds.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
Yeah. Also, part of the reason I like this intro is because we're going through the credits.
Yes.
We're putting the names next to who they're portraying.
Which is nice, but I immediately forgot them.
Yeah.
You just kind of recognize, like, okay, that's the brother, that one's the cocaine one, that's the grumpy aunt, and, like, that's all you really need.
Yeah, I mean, they
don't call names a whole lot in this movie.
No, but when we also go through, like, movies and shows like we do, like, it's hard to remember every single name.
That's true, and also, like, I think, especially for horror movies, there's a real, like, there's a real problem.
Important character or just killer fodder.
Yeah, and then also, like, part of the reason why, like, rom-coms and more romance-based movies in general, you remember the names from those, I think, a lot more, is because there's a lot more, like, effort in the dialogue to say people's names throughout the whole thing, which isn't how people talk, but, like, that makes sense because they're trying to get you to remember these characters or create drama later on that you're not going to see them in. Well, whereas with horror movies, like, screaming out names doesn't necessarily make sense for the whole movie.
Yeah.
And it's just the way it is.
Well, I think it's also emotional attachment just because we know in horror films certain people are going to be there's fodder, so...
Yeah, and, like, I also think that it's just kind of there are writing styles for every style of movie. Yeah. And it's just kind of the one that horror ended up with, because you're going to start off with 8 people and you're going to end up with 1 by the end of the movie. Yeah. So... meh.
Yeah, well, and this one...
It is as it is.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you bring up rom-coms, because this is...
It's kind of a rom-com.
Yeah, exactly, and I hadn't really thought of it. Like, I thought of it as an anti-romance movie, but this one's also kind of like a rom-com gone horribly wrong.
I was just say, like, there's a ton of, like, bits and elements, especially the first half of this movie, where you're like, oh, this could have been a rom-com, that instead of ending with, like, someone accidentally catching the house on fire and having to milk a cat, ended up with people dead.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So, back to the movie. They now kiss and walk down the aisle as the camera tilts up behind the house, or up to the house.
The perfect wedding.
Side note, you never see the full house.
This is true.
They purposely did that to make it feel ominous.
But, like, I kind of like that, because this house itself, and this is something I'll talk about later on once we get to the murder part, yes. But the house itself lacks character. And I'm okay with that because they chose to go that way for the most part. There's a few scenes that I'll bitch about later. Okay. But I like that they don't, like, show the house like they do in Clue, because in Clue the house is a character in a way. Yeah. Like, you feel connected to it, you see the silhouette of it, and you're like, oh, that's the ballroom from Clue! This house you don't. And that's fine.
I would say that besides, like, maybe 1 or 2 rooms in it.
Yeah, definitely.
But at the same time, this one doesn't need that level like Clue does.
No. And, like, that's okay. And I'll get to the few parts that I'm going to bitch about later, but for the most part, I like that we don't see the house.
Yes. And so, now we cut to Grace and Alex in their room, where they are getting ready for the after party.
Okay, this is the one scene where I'm like, okay, her wedding dress is long sleeve, right? Or it has, I can't remember if it's long sleeve or it has sleeves. And it has...
It has sleeves. I think it's full long sleeve.
Full long sleeves, and it, like, turtlenecks up her neck a little way, right? So to get into that bad boy, it's not a zipper thing. Those are little buttons, little teeny tiny buttons that go all the way up her back. And you have to undo every single one. And that's if they worked correctly and they didn't sew you into your dress. So they're making this like tee-hee, we're gonna have fun. Whereas a normal bride, this is like the one bitchy thing I have about this wedding. Yeah. A normal bride would be like, help, I can't get out.
Well, and we were actually talking about this in text a little bit yesterday, because Sunday I started watching Quigley Down Under, And, like, I had questions about, like, what's the term? The, logistics of those kinds of dresses.
There's a lot.
And you always find this stuff because I
love costume.
Yeah, and I'm becoming more into it, but not as much as I used to. I'm still more focused on plot, characters, and settings. I
do think that, especially if you're like a detail-oriented person with movies, like, once you get into, like, especially historic costuming, but just, like, costumes in general and, like, picking them apart.
Yeah.
It does add a layer of, like, oh, they didn't do the thing, or, oh, they're so close, but, like, so, like, a lot of people, when I was reading online, bitched about how she's in her wedding dress this whole movie.
Yeah.
To me, this makes sense, because they don't try to, like, undo the dress, and, like, they get interrupted before they fully get into fun time mode.
Well,
she probably can't get out of her wedding dress. She probably herself cannot undo the back.
Yeah, you're actually probably right with that.
Yeah.
Or you are right. I
say that because, like, I've had friends who get married and they wear similar dresses, and I distinctly remember one of them, she got married, the buttons wouldn't do correctly, so with little pieces of metal, they, like, closed the back individually and then snipped it so you couldn't see it in the pictures. But that meant that night when they went back to their hotel room at, like, 2 in the morning, she couldn't get out. They had to, like, bring snips and, like, snip her out of the dress.
Oh, what women will do for fashion.
I mean, she looked great.
Yeah.
She looked amazing. But, like, if you're gonna get murdered later that night, keep that in mind, ladies. You might want a zip-up dress from Dillard's instead of a fancy one.
Yeah, or you just might want to go full Laura Croft underneath your wedding dress.
You may be full Laura Croft. Maybe you just wear a suit. Be more practical. You'd have more pockets.
Yeah. Yeah. Honestly, I still don't notice a lot of this stuff. The only time I do is, like, when it's, like, super ridiculous, like the I
love a ridiculous costume.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre with Alexandra Daddario, and, like,
yes.
her shirt's completely unbuttoned and it's just perfectly sitting there.
It's definitely, like, taped onto her body in real life. Yeah.
Exactly. That was also another Sugi recommendation.
It's so good. I love costumes, and I honestly think the costumes in this movie, while they were not, like, memorable costumes, like you said with, like, Laura Croft's outfit, like, everyone can recognize it even if it's not on Laura.
Yeah.
Her, like, none of them are like that in this movie, but they are actually well thought out. Even if, like, a normal person would be like, why is she still in the dress? Like, someone thought that through.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's still in their wedding dress. Or wedding outfit.
Yeah, they'd never, well, because that makes sense. They came back from the house. No one's had time to get changed, because they're like, all right, let's get this ritual going. We've got till tomorrow morning.
Yeah, well, I think even at my buddy's, Micah's wedding, we,
like, if you're gonna party till 2 a.m., you don't want to have a costume change.
Yeah, no, like, even the few of us that went back to the, Airbnb just to hang out with the underage groomsmen, so that way they weren't left alone.
Yeah, you don't want to feel by yourself on a wedding.
I don't think any of us changed until we actually went to bed.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's just how it be sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, at this part, the directors were actually worried about the chemistry between Grace and Alex.
Okay, yeah, I can... Yeah.
Yeah.
From watching the interview, I can see why they would be worried.
Yeah, I guess Weaving actually went out before filming with him, to get drinks and just build up a repertoire with, O'Brien, just to develop a natural chemistry. And
yeah, it's a nice touch.
Me looking from a non-married person point of view, for me, it felt natural.
Yeah.
Like, it felt like they were a couple ready to get intimate.
Yes. And I will say, like, and granted, I will admit that my dating and marriage story are not the norm. Yeah. We literally were like, hey, courthouse, here's $21 in cash, let's go. But, like, I have lots of friends who this is their dream, is like, oh, we date for 2 years, we meet and date for 2 years, and then we get married in our beautiful picturesque wedding, and then we're gonna have a happily ever after marriage. And some, like, if that's your dream, that's your dream.
Yeah.
Can't change that. And so, like, yeah, they're pre-marriage stuff for the most part, other than the fact he fails to mention his psycho parents, feels very normal. Feels very natural.
Well, we are about to get into that in a few.
Yeah, and then...
because as things are just about to get hot and heavy, Aunt Helene walks, or just
waltzes in on them.
Not even waltzes in, is just chilling there watching.
This is such, like, and, like, it's creepy because this is a spooky movie, and you're ready for it to be a spooky movie. However, if this had been shot with a slightly, like, more exposure and brighter colors and, like, rom-com music in the background, this would have been hilarious.
Oh yeah, exactly. And so she appears and tells them that the family is waiting.
Do you want to play a game?
That they will have to hide better than that. And then disappears back through a servant's corridor.
It's cute. She has no idea what the game is yet, though.
Exactly.
She's hoping that this is murder time.
I think she's looking for revenge because this is the Helene from the opening scene
where she lost the game.
Yeah.
In a way. Yeah.
/ maybe won, technically.
Yeah. I mean, she's
technically the family won.
Yeah, the family won, and like they were married. So if she had health insurance on him, she would get it.
Yep. Fun fact, if I remember right, they mentioned that the house did not have those passages and was thought of on the day of the shoot.
Yeah.
The
layout of this house makes no sense.
It's actually a closet she steps into.
But honestly, I like that the house makes no sense layout-wise, because unlike, I'm going to bring it up because it's my favorite mansion, but like Clue, even though you don't see the direct connection between all of the rooms, you know in your head where the layout is.
Well,
more or less. And this house is a maze, and I like that.
Well, and I like it. I think it's important for this one to not know where you're at all times.
It gives you a confusion.
Because we're also with Grace.
Yes.
She doesn't know where anything is in the house. She's been in the house, as far as we know, maybe an afternoon for the wedding.
Yeah, and I also like that this adds a level of, like, when you play hide and go seek as a kid, especially if you're like at a friend's house or a grandparent you don't visit very often, there's like a sense of like exploration and adventure to it where you're like, oh gosh. And granted, you're a kid, so there's that, like, oh, I have to hide now, anxiety to it. But, like, you're looking at the room with fresh eyes. You don't already know the hiding places. And that's hard to do as an adult, because, like, it's really easy for someone to look in a living room and go, oh, there's 4 doors, I bet you one of those is a bathroom, and the rest of them are probably a closet and 2 bedrooms.
Yeah.
So it's nice that she truly is blind in this house.
Yeah, we're also not 2 foot tall and can hide in places and fall asleep wherever we sit.
Literally don't fit into a record box. Yeah.
Yeah. And so one other side little note, appearance-wise, of Helene. Mm-hmm. The producers weren't really sure what to make of her costume when they first saw it. They described her as being out of another film.
Yes, but I like that because she's kind of the odd man out.
She's very much so the one trying to stick with traditions throughout this film. And I think that really reflects in her costume because they described it as being the outfit and cape were based off a cardinal's outfit.
Yeah. Yeah. And like it adds to that level of like she's the one, like I won't say running the family, but she's running this part of the family. She
is, if this was an RPG, she would be the cleric or priest.
Yeah.
Because she is stuck in the ways.
Yep.
And I just realized she's most likely selected to be celibate the rest of her life.
Probably, yeah.
Which also fits with the cardinal attire.
It does. And also, like, it adds a layer to her that, because we don't truly know a lot about her. Mm-hmm. Most of the family, like, we get told things here and there, but we don't get, like, a detailed backstory from anybody.
Which is perfect.
Yeah, so, like, this costume lets you know right off the bat, even if you're not into clothing and, like, you're not a detailed thinker, it immediately sets her apart from everyone else in the film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, at this point, after Helene creepily walks away,
shuffles out the room,
Alex reveals the family tradition to Grace for the first time that to be accepted by the family, they must play a game.
In her defense, I will say that Grace's character does a nice job of being like, oh, well, I hope it's checkers. I'll kill at some checkers.
Yeah.
That's a good attitude to be like, you couldn't have told me this earlier.
Well, I also like it because even though for her it's a ridiculous part of the family, she's still doing it because she so desperately wants to be part of a family.
Which I can understand that on paper logic. Mm-hmm. The only complaint I have is again with the husband character. Because he's like, I haven't talked to them for 2 years, which in this couple's world, 2 years is a hell of a long time. Because they're like, oh my god, we dated for so long, 2 years. Which for some people is. For some people that is a long time, and that's fair. But like, 2 years.
It's longer than old-timey times because we hear shit like...
we dated for a week.
Yeah, all these serial killers who are like, well, we knew each other 2 days.
Yeah.
Time to get married.
Yeah.
It's like,
oh yeah, no. Like, like I said, 2 years for some people is in fact a long time, and that's fine. But this is my one gripe with him and his character is like, he told her, I haven't seen my family for 2 years, and she's like, I would love to have a big family. And he goes, I have a big family. I haven't talked to them in 2 years, and I don't plan on it after we get done being married, but like, I have a big family.
Yeah, because
that's a little odd.
Well, we do actually get to that a little bit, because as Grace takes one last look in the mirror, she decides to head down, walks down the stairs.
I mean, she handles this like a champ.
Other side note, most of the set was permanent. They were not allowed to touch almost everything in the rooms because
I love that.
Almost everything was filmed at heritage sites in Toronto. And
and that stuff's old as shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't touch that.
Exactly. And so now we cut to the father and Alex talking, and the father is trying to test Alex's resolve, seeing if he can do what's needed to be done. Which,
man already should know this answer.
Yeah.
But, we gotta play it up a little bit for the camera.
And at this point, we're learning more so that Grace is completely in the dark.
Yeah.
As she looks over various games, because Alex also says that they are, that they're not going to be in contact after tonight.
Which, again, like, rude husband character. Come on, man, you could have given some information.
Yeah, just be
like prepped her a little bit, like, hey, you should bring a knapsack full of snacks and fresh water and a knife.
Yeah.
My family's really into potential death.
Yeah, semantics.
Yeah, this is their little thing. Here's my wedding present to you, honey. It's a gun.
And so, some other little side notes of the, background,
the setting.
A lot of the walls in that room were not actually there for the shoot. They had to put them in there to alter the spaces,
get it to look right.
Also, all the taxidermy came from one specific collection, including the bear with a goat in its mouth.
The bear with the goat in its mouth is gold. And like, you and I like bad taxidermy.
Yes.
And all of the taxidermy isn't bad. It's nicely done taxidermy. It's just not tasteful.
No, it's not at all.
And also, I love that, like, the taxidermy, all of it feels like it's wrong. Because you can almost tell that the house doesn't have this taxidermy in it.
Yeah.
But like, there's so much focus on it, it kind of feels like, oh, well, we had it, we want it all in this room, this is the taxidermy room now.
Yeah, it's part of the family room, it's the heritage pieces.
Exactly. But like, there's always, it's hard to describe if you haven't, like, been in the taxidermy tavern of the Midwest. There is a entire, like, genre of restaurants where, like, having dead things on the wall is just, like, part of the decor.
When I worked for Cabela's Bank, we had taxidermy all over our office.
Cabela's is king of taxidermy shit in their stuff. And, like, there are restaurants, Cabela's is almost one of them, depending on which Cabela's you're at.
Yeah.
Where, like, some of the taxidermy is there, and you're like, this is part of the place, and it feels correct, and, like...
Yeah, like the center mountain portion.
Yeah, and, like, it's kind of like how, like, there's good art, like, you can put up art in your house, and, like, sometimes you're like, oh, that fits perfectly on that wall, it's the right piece, and then sometimes you're like, why do you have so much stuff on your wall?
Yeah.
This taxidermy, while good... is the stuff on the wall version of taxidermy, and I like it.
Exactly. But also, like, when I was re-going through my notes, the bear with a goat in its mouth is so actually funny. Pretty fitting for, like, later on in the movie.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's good. I love it.
And so, we're also more introduced to, Becky, the mother-in-law.
Becky.
She's pissy because some family members aren't there.
How dare they not partake in our ritual?
Yes, and this is where we learn that they kind of have a mother-in-law, daughter-in-law moment where we learn that Grace was in foster care and that Becky is actually happy that she brought Alex to the family. The family, even though they're cautious of what's to come, they very much feel like they want Grace back in the family.
Yes.
Grace...
I think this is the start to what could have been a more, like, story-based divide in the family, where there's a requirement to do the murder, but a lot of the family would like to have more members in the family.
Yeah.
Without having to, potentially murder people.
Yeah.
Whereas there's also the divide being there's the younger generation not wanting that, and then there's the older generation, and Becky kind of feels like she's landing a little bit in the middle. She feels a little bit like she's being groomed to take over the head hierarchy spot.
Yeah.
With some of her dialogue and, like, her trying to initiate a lot of stuff.
Well...
but at the same time, she clearly, like, still falls in the younger category.
Yeah, well, it's also an interesting dynamic, too, because Grace and Alex's desires conflict with each other.
Yes.
Neither of them can be happy for this movie to succeed, because...
Yeah, for sure.
As Alex doesn't want anything to do with the family, but Grace does.
Yeah.
The whole reason we're here is because of Grace.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so, Alex takes Grace away from Becky because he's afraid that she's trying to reveal too much.
Can't be sharing any secrets now.
Yep.
We've got 30 whole minutes to go.
As a new set of relatives with kids in tow arrives.
Yeah.
And
why not?
These new players we are introduced to are Fitch,
mm-hmm.
Emily,
mm-hmm.
and they were late because they just can't fly commercial anymore, and that their private plane was delayed or some stupid pompous shit.
Why can't you just, like, that's just,
I actually have a friend who travels a lot for business.
Mm-hmm.
He technically needs aisle rows,
mm-hmm.
or I think he does fly business now because he's flown so much for work.
Yeah, you gotta upgrade at some point.
But he needs it because he's 6'8" and he has giant fucking legs.
Doesn't fit in the chair.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, I've seen him in airplanes, like, he can do it, but it's so awkward.
It's like watching a sardine go back in the box.
It's like watching Shaquille O'Neal in his, like, car commercials of, like, him awkwardly trying to get out of the car. He's got his, like, knees
up by his ears. Yeah, I love those commercials.
It's exactly that.
Gold. Yeah, this family doesn't have that problem. This family's just pompous as shit.
Yeah. And so, now we are taken to a room that is reserved only for the family members. And it is filled with... I wish I had
a room that was just for family members.
Rifle and taxidermy.
It's so fun. Like, this is such a, like, unrealistic rich person, like, concept. Like, this, I'm sure this is not a thing that, like, externally wealthy, like, mansion-holding people do. Where they're like, this room, only family members step into this room. No one outside can enter the sacred room.
They open it and it's just covered in a layer of dust because none of them want to do the housework.
Well, if your maid can't go in there, who's dusting? She's not family, is she? And if so, we've got different problems.
One of them does mention she's only there because he likes the way she dances.
Well, I'll get to the maids in a little bit, don't worry.
And so, at this point, we learn the family history,
mm-hmm.
and the tradition of playing the game started in the American Civil War.
So long ago.
When they started manufacturing and playing cards. And then they ended up buying sports teams and among other investments.
I love how they call sports teams investments.
Yes.
Okay.
Despite, this is actually a pretty long scene.
It does actually go on for quite a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The reason it doesn't feel long or doesn't feel uninteresting is because Radio Silence made the choice to have the camera constantly moving.
It does.
And in the background, you can see like all the characters. Like some of them are, yes, this is how we're supposed to be composed and listen to this every time.
Mm-hmm. This is the speech that we heard every time everyone gets married.
And then we have Fitch.
Yes.
Who's
doing their own thing.
Yeah, exactly. And so Tony explains that there is the reason they've been so successful is there is someone watching over them, a Mr. LaBelle. Which
I think the name was meant to hold a little bit more weight to the general audience than it ended up.
I agree. I will go into that towards the end because I have some theories on who LaBelle is.
Oh no. Okay, we'll get into it when you get into it.
Yes.
Yeah. We'll get into it.
Because it doesn't we don't really know much about LaBelle until really later on in the movie.
Yes.
And so Tony explains that Mr. LaBelle gave their great-great-grandfather Victor a mysterious box on his trip over from Europe, and that told him that he would fund any endeavor if he solved it before port. I was watching this or when I was rewatching it, I thought of it as a shitty version of Great Expectations.
Yeah. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that seems right.
It also makes it sound like the playing card business started off as like a joke of like, yeah, sure, you'll fund anything I do.
Yeah, but also like, this is the part where it's a little odd, because like, I can see how a general audience would be like, oh yeah, playing cards, Civil War, sure, that feels right. Playing cards have been around since the ancient Egyptians.
Yeah,
like
Nintendo started off as a playing card company.
Like, playing cards have been around forever. Board games have been around forever. Like, it feels like a little bit of a forced time frame.
Yeah, if it makes it feel like their family should be more old school, old wealth, old European wealth instead of new-ish American wealth.
Yeah, new American wealth. Yeah, so I think the timeline is there because to an American audience saying like, oh, we've had old family wealth since the Civil War, to an American ear sounds like a really long time. It's not. But to a European ear, I'm sure that sounds like a joke. Yeah. So like, I can see why it's there. I can see why the timeline is added to an American audience, but like, I almost would have been okay if they were like, they left that part out.
But at the same time, I feel like if this movie was set any other time, they'd have to specify which Civil War. Oh, that's true. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that might have been a problem. Yeah. And so, now we are, given the dynamics of what's going to happen, a blank card is going to be placed in the box, and whichever game is chosen by the box, they shall play. Yes. Better hope it's something nice. Also, after knowing that they intentionally made it feel like the family was out of touch with the rituals, I don't think anyone knows how the box actually works. I think you're probably right. It's just a magic box that prints out games. Yeah. Well, and the other thing that you can kind of see the start of the disconnect / like the questioning of the family, because they know what's going to happen. That's not a question at all. But I think what happens if we fail is less well known. Like, it's known, but it's like kooky aunt. Well, yeah, they do bring that up in a little bit. Yeah. So, now after a tense moment, broken by Fitch saying that he played Old Maid. What even is Old Maid? Okay, sir, calm down. Which gives a clue that unless a specific game is picked, they don't actually play it. Yeah, okay, that leaves... Okay, this adds more to the bitching that I have for this movie. I like this movie, but like, I like bitching about movies that I like. Mm-hmm. So, that part makes it clear, and because there's other family members that are not dead, that there are lots of games. Yeah. And potentially only one is the game that murders people. But maybe not. Maybe there's other games and they've been playing them wrong, / they haven't gotten to that game. But also, like, they say, they throughout the whole movie, every time a new family member joins the family, we have to play this game. Game. Does this apply to babies? What about adoptions? Well, I don't think any of them are... There's children. There are children, but I don't think any of them are open enough to adopt. Fair, but like, I feel like we need for a movie whose entire premise is around weird rules. Mm-hmm. I would have liked the weird rule explained just a hair more. Just a hair more, because like, if it's for every child, that would explain why there's only 2 kids. So here's the thing: is that I do think they mentioned that it's more marriage based. It's hinted that it's more. It is hinted, but I would have. When I think it's more someone from the outside enters the family, because if you're a child born into the family, you're already a Ladamus. True. I kind of want it to be whenever someone new is. You want a little bit more of a hard rule, whereas I like the mystery, and it adds to. The family has no clue what the fuck's going on. Yes. I think the reason why I want the hard rule of, like, all the time is because it would explain a little bit more, why there's
there's multiple married couples, but throughout pretty much even the flashbacks that we get of previous times,
the one
flashback, but even that, we got 2 kids for this whole family, a big quote unquote rich family. There's no other cousins.
That actually brings up some other things they talk about later on in the movie.
True.
I like where you're going. I think they do answer it, but in a roundabout way. It's one of those things where, like, the movie does well at giving enough of a backstory, but doesn't fully divulge, which is great, especially for this movie.
True.
So, after a tense few moments, the game is chosen.
Dun dun dun.
Hide and seek.
Ah, dang it.
Yes, where everyone takes a disappointed sigh somewhat.
Yeah.
And Alex pulls Grace aside and tries to get her to meet in his room in secret.
Yes.
And then Tony explains to Grace the rules as they were set by Victor, and is also super vague, as much of an asshole as Alex.
Yeah,
about
be a little bit more clear here.
The quote-unquote winning conditions. I like this because, again, everything's left vague because Grace is supposed to be unprepared.
True.
And just not all of a sudden a badass or freaking out. She adapts to the situation.
Yes. Grace's character does keep this movie plot rolling a little bit more smoothly than it could have.
Yep. And so, as the family readies up and Grace goes off to find a hiding spot, the phonogram plays an old record, the hide-and-seek song. Run, run, run.
Yeah. Which is meant to be creepy, but, like, there's other creepier old-timey songs. So, like, it just feels like it's the one that was the most, like, directly related.
So, the song was made at the last minute and done by the composer of the music for Southbound.
That makes sense.
It was made in a couple days.
That makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
I like, there's an entire genre of old-timey music for that's like the macabre cabaret style music. One of my favorite songs of all time is from that. It's Teddy Bears Go Out to the Woods to Play. A delightful old-timey creepy song. For no good reason. I think it was meant for like a good fun time children's song and just ended up being creepy as hell.
Yeah, or like how was it the Insidious franchise turned Tiny Tim's song Through the Tulips into a horror song?
Which makes me so sad because that was the first time I had experienced Tiny Tim, and then I went in and looked into him. I'm like, this man is gold. This man is treasure.
Yeah, he's the Bob Ross of the music world.
Yeah, in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, like this, he's such a comedian, and like, bummer that song is now creepy, but like, at the same time, like, he sang creepy. He sang purposefully in a high creepy voice.
Yeah, kind of like the Bee Gees.
A little bit like the Bee Gees. Or like, yeah, but there's a whole genre of like, creepy songs that like, this one felt rushed.
Yeah. Well, I don't think so. I think it's perfectly fitting for it, because it leads up more, because if it was intentionally creepy, I think it would tip off Grace a little bit.
I agree with it shouldn't be more creepy.
Yeah.
I think that from my cabaret of spooky music that isn't meant to be spooky, it just happens to be slightly unnerving.
Who did the mash?
Not that one. More like, the worms play pinnacle on your snout sort of songs.
See, I don't know any of these songs.
I don't know why I know them either, but they were songs I sang as a child. But like, there's a rhythm and like old-ish word choices that normally like accompany those songs.
Yeah.
That like they're not creepy by themselves, but the second you sit there and as an adult you're like, what is a pinnacle? What game is Pinnacle that we're playing on snouts? Why are the worms doing it? Obviously because you're dead, but like...
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of old-timey songs were about death.
Oh, yeah. It's a whole thing.
Yeah.
But like, I like where the song was going, but like, they didn't have time to like, fully polish up the song, in my opinion.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it was made in a couple days, but... Yeah. I don't know. I think it does
I think it does its job. It would have been like a cherry on top of the cake if it had been like a full new addition to the macabre cabaret of songs.
Okay. I get what you're getting at now.
Yeah. Will it, does it hurt the movie? No, it doesn't. It's just a personal, random interest that I understand that not a lot of people are into.
Yes.
But enough that there's entire YouTube channels dedicated to it, so, someone's into it.
Actually, I mean, there is kind of a resurgence. I like Huling and, what's that, Mongolian band? You know, which, yeah, The Who.
The Who.
Yeah. And then, my brother recently found out and shared with me that I think it's Parasite Eve, the new one of the Bring Me the Horizons new songs.
Oh, yeah.
That intro, the whole, chanting. Mm-hmm. Hungarian folk song.
Yeah, it's coming back.
Yeah.
So, I can see where the movie was going with it, but, this movie also isn't, a musical masterpiece like some movies are. So, I'm not super bummed out, but, you also do kind of hope, if you're into this genre, if you're into the weird, spoopy children game genre, just like you always go on eBay hoping for a haunted doll. It's always that little pin that no one else wants, but you do. Yeah,
exactly. And so as Grace hides, the family readies up. And what does our weird RPG family
This is so RPG.
level up with or equip?
This is very RPG.
Charity, Alex's wife, gets a gun.
Yes, which very fitting.
Dan gets a rifle.
Uh-huh. Yes.
Helene gets a bearded axe.
I love it. It's so badass, but also deranged and insane, and I love it.
Becky gets a bow and arrow that makes her look like an older Katniss Everdeen.
It does, but also all of their weapons fit their personalities in some way. These aren't weapons that they just have around the house and they're all right, well, we're out of guns, Grandma, so here's your axe.
Oh yeah.
It's no, these are weapons that all of them have been all right, well, you won the game, sweetie. Now, what sort of weaponry are you interested in? We'll get it for you.
Yes. And so Emily is given a pepper box revolver, which I learned this is the version of the gun she is given has actually been in the North American Clue since 1972 and was introduced in Cluedo in 1996.
Dope.
A nice little nod to the Clue franchise.
Yeah, the original Murder in a House.
It just made me, something clicked in my mind. This is like Clue, but if everyone's a murderer.
This is the fourth ending of Clue.
Yes. And so, Fitch gets a crossbow, and I love his reaction to this because he is not prepared for this in the least.
No, he's not.
It's just gold.
It is. It truly is.
And then Tony himself takes a rifle, and they all line up as Grace hides in a dumbwaiter.
Yes, which I can understand her desire to hide in the dumbwaiter, but also weak choice, girl.
Honestly,
hide and seek was a high competitive, high stakes game in our family. We were hide and seek fucking champions. Do you want to know where you hide if you want to never be found?
Where's that?
So they're rich, right? So they have decorative pillows on their bed. So you take the normal pillows out from behind the decorative pillows, and you put those in a closet somewhere, put them nicely, make it look like it's purposeful. Those are the extra pillows for when you need another one. Then you hide yourself where those pillows are, put the pillows back, put a blanket around you, just lay there. No one will ever find you.
Or you want to know how you play it as an adult?
What? You just go to work?
No, you let the kids hide and then pretend like you're searching.
Yes.
I'm going to be a great uncle.
I'm gonna warn you, Brian and I fully plan on passing down the pure outrage and insanity that is our family's hide and seek. We have lost children for hours because they are so good at hiding by the time we're done.
Lost. No, air quotes.
We've got 10 people looking for these suckers.
Nice.
One of them folded herself in half and put herself in what I can only describe as a 2x2 cabinet that was originally meant to hold a record player on top of it.
This is where the record box came in. Okay.
She opened the door, took out all of the toys, put them in a toy bin, folded herself in half, put herself in it, and then closed the door behind her.
Impressive.
I don't know if we found her or not. I think she just came out at some point because she was tired.
You know, I should have done some research on where the history of hide and seek came from.
I think it's just a natural game that kids play. Like, it's fun to play hide and seek.
Well, maybe it was like maybe it just came from like some old ass time where like it was important of like, hey, kids, when you see this, you need to hide. Yeah. There's a bear.
Yeah, but also like there are games like tag, like hide and seek that I think just unanimously all kids in some extent or version play.
It's like kittens fighting and shit.
Yeah, or like wrestling. Like kids will wrestle no matter like what you teach them. Like there are just some things that kids do. And I think hide and seek has become one of those. Okay.
Might do some side tangent after this.
Yeah.
Or research later tonight. And so one little side note that Grace biting her nails,
I liked it. It was a good detail.
It worked out later because that was kind of a little bit of a mistake. The directors got a call from, I think it was the producer or the editor saying, hey, or the guy who checks the continuity. Mm-hmm. There was a part where later on where she's in the bedroom and her nails
are all messed up.
Yeah. And they're like, oh shit. Like, it's a little detail, like, no one's gonna notice. But then they realize, oh shit, she's chewing on her nails in that dumbwaiter. That's perfect.
And like, it's also a really good detail because, like, again, for the ladies who watched this movie, which I know is not necessarily like everyone, but like when you get your nails done for your wedding, that's not like a little like, oh, I put on a glossy top coat and like maybe they don't look great. Those nails gonna look spotless like they would for a movie. Yeah. And so like I think some people would have noticed if her nails were beat up and no one explained it. Yeah. Like that would have been one of those things that like I think more and more people would have been like, oh gosh, a detail missed. Sort of nitpicking.
Yeah, like in what was it? I think it was the second Transformers where like he drops his books and then it cuts and he's carrying a different set of books.
Yeah. It's like that where like once one person notices it, everyone will notice it forever. Yeah. And so I actually like that they have her bite her nails, and also like nail biting a lot of people see it as like a childish like habit that like you didn't grow out of. Yeah. And so I like it because it ties it all back together with like this is a childish game that's being taken very seriously.
Yeah. And so as Grace is hidden, Charity is asked to stay behind and console Alex, who has immediately after they've left fled to the servant passages. Yes. Which here is why I think Grace's hiding spot is actually great.
It's not a bad hiding spot.
Because the family seems to forget about the servant stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Which a dumbwaiter is very much a servant's utility.
Yeah. No, I agree. I'm just speaking from past experiences of intense hide and seek.
Yes, I'm aware. And so, as a side note about Charity's dress as well, it was done in an Art Deco aesthetic.
It was. I love it.
With that in mind to portray a sense of vulnerability, but she's also a master manipulator. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's a very subtle...
Again, she's a gold digger.
She is very much a gold digger.
Yeah.
It's a subtle nod to her character because, again, we don't get a ton from... Like, the movie doesn't blatantly say a ton of stuff about each character, but, like, it gives you just enough that, like, you don't question when lines come up later on because it's now part of their character.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, little details in this movie.
There's a lot of good details.
Yeah. And so, as the family splits up into pairs...
Scooby-Doo style.
Fitch asks Becky how long this takes, and she mentions that it's only happened once since she's joined the family, which was most likely the opening from 30 years ago.
Probably.
Yeah. So, at this point, Grace is fed up. She's not going to be sitting in a dumbwaiter her whole wedding night when she could be getting it on with her husband.
True, but, like, again, I can understand at this point the family not wanting to be like, hey, by the way, we're going to murder you. Mm-hmm. But, like, I do think it would have been fair sportsmanship if they had been like, by the way, the time's up at sunrise.
They did.
Yeah.
He vaguely mentioned...
Oh, yeah, that's right.
If you can make it to morning...
Yeah, okay, so she's just a weak-ass pussy who gave up.
Yeah.
Okay, never mind.
She gave up 5 minutes into the game.
Ah, come on, girl, you had a good spot.
Yeah. Of this, as she gets out, her dress is torn. Mm-hmm. There are actually 17 iterations of the dress. And the costume designers wanted to use it as a roadmap of her night. So as she makes a decision, her dress changes every time.
Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah. And so the directors also wanted to use the dress as a metaphor for the degradation from grandeur.
I can see where they were trying to go with it. I don't know if the general audience is going to grab that.
No, exactly.
Yeah. I can see...
It's a nice touch, but it just...
Yeah. The transformation of the dress, especially once you come to the understanding that, like, she probably literally cannot get out of it in a practical sense, that, I think, does hit really nicely and, like, does actually translate to a general watcher. Yeah. I don't know if the metaphor of the dress is going to, though.
No, not for me either. So at this time, one of the kids, Georgie, has run off.
I hate Georgie's name. Georgie is such, like, an old-timey Victorian name, and it sounds like a spooky doll that's, like, haunted and coming to kill you.
It's also the kid from It.
Oh, that's what it is. Okay. Yeah.
Georgie.
Yeah, that's why.
We all float down here.
That's why I don't like the name.
Yeah. And so he has run off, and the maid watching him begins to search for her as Alex pulls Grace into a room, or for him, as Alex pulls Grace into the room.
There we go.
And as he's trying to shush her, they hide because the maid enters the room, but when a noise outside catches her attention, she peeks out and is shot in the face by Emily, who is so excited.
Emily is ready to murder.
Yes.
She is here and ready to kill.
Which the family now enters and starts giving her shit because...
God damn it, stop killing the maids!
And on top of that, she's only supposed to maim Grace because they need her alive for the ritual.
The ritual.
Yeah.
But also, like, it does bring up a bit of a question because, like, the maids clearly know some stuff. I don't know everything, but, like...
Okay, so... I think two of the maids, and definitely the butler.
Oh, the butler is in on it hardcore.
The two of the maids do. The one who is there because Tony likes how she dances.
Yes. I have a feeling that she's, like, the newest
maid.
And the rest of them have been there long enough that, like, they can't leave, sort of thing.
Or the Lodomuses keep them close to their chest. They're on the payroll.
Yeah. So, like, I do wonder what the contract for these maids and or butler look like. Because, like, the butler seems to be into it. Like, he's found his murder people.
Yes.
But the maids don't necessarily seem as, like, kill happy as the rest of everyone else does. But, like, they ain't gonna stop nobody. Mm-hmm. But also, like, they have to realize that, like, they are disposable. So, like...
Yeah, because even though, like, everyone around them is saying, oh... You shot our favorite maid.
They're still not gonna, like, do anything about it.
Yeah, they're like, well...
She's
bleeding out with a big face wound as, like, everyone's like, well, damn.
Dang it, gotta find a new maid.
Well, we gotta get her out of here so Grace doesn't see her.
This is the equivalent of, like, someone ruining your favorite rug that you spent a lot of money on. You're like, oh, no, not my rug. I guess I gotta get a new one.
Well, okay, so also this part is why it was important Grace was in the dark.
Yes.
Because this is a complete and total shock for her.
Yes. I do like Grace's, like, character reaction.
And the director said they did that so that way however ridiculous the family's reaction was and whatever they did, Grace counterbalanced whatever comedic shit they threw.
Okay, I can see where they're trying to go with that.
Yeah, because they flip a fucking coin to decide who gets the head and who gets the feet.
True. I do wish they had carried her more like Clue did. Drop her like a log on the concrete.
Yeah, but I don't. But I think that would make them a little bit too heartless.
Yeah,
in this setting, where in Clue that was comedic. In this setting, it would have had a completely different read.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, and so as the maid is moved out of the room, Alex explains everything.
Yes,
that she pulled the one bad card.
Bad luck.
And we cut to Emily, who we already somewhat know is doing drugs. Because as she enters, she's wiping her nose. Or as we first meet her, she's wiping her nose.
Yes.
Again, the little character details they add.
She's a little unhinged.
She bumps some coke, and Alex and Grace head to their secret passage. So
she gets more coke on her, like, face than she does up her nose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, where her super excitement comes from, odd little curiosity. I spoke to one of my friends who will remain unnamed that I know has tried coke before.
Yes, the experimental one.
He's explained it as like a more intense Adderall.
Okay, alright. So, maybe not a murder shotgun wielding crazy person?
One that someone shouldn't have.
Yeah.
If they're gonna.
Yeah, I think maybe she already was a shotgun wielding crazy person and then is now on coke.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Drugs are bad.
Drugs are bad, but also like just don't be a shotgun wielding crazy person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so actually her use of drugs is a somewhat important detail later on.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So in the passage, Grace kind of starts to freak out.
Fair. I mean, the maid did just get shot in the face.
As Alex is telling her not to.
Yeah, that's not helpful. But okay.
As she proceeds to put on Converse.
I mean, at least she was smart enough to do a shoe change.
Again, a nice touch of color for this one.
Yes.
Where she ends up breaking the mold for because again, this movie is really much a fish out of water story.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And
where everything's been subdued up till this point, her shoes are what we would normally see, like that punch of color on a wedding dress.
Yes.
Side note, those Converse, the yellow Converse, were actually discontinued.
Yeah.
And they had to take a gray pair of Chuck Taylors and paint them custom yellow.
Well, they still look nice.
Yeah. They're a nice touch. So, as Alex further explains that if they don't play the game, or if they don't even try, they die.
Yeah. Which, yeah, there's still a lot of loopholes here, but yeah, okay.
Again, the family is disconnected from their origin.
Yes, very much.
And so, they split from here, and so does her dress as she turns it into more of like a battle skirt.
Yeah, I'm gonna say she turned it to T-length.
T-length?
So there's different, for every length of dress, it all has names. Isn't that fun and exciting and useless?
T-length sounds like something from the Victorian era where like, it was like a lady get-together. Oh, we'll just wear T-length, there will be no men.
I can show my ankles freely.
Yes.
Let my knees flap in the wind.
Our hairy legs can breathe. It has been a long winter.
They'd still wear socks, and those socks came up to your knees.
Old-timey shit.
Oh, I love old-timey shit. Yeah, no. I like that her costume does start off very stoic and proper, and maybe a little uptight-esque with the whole long sleeves and then the full neck. Like, it is a full covered dress. Yeah. And like, as she goes, like, the move to Converse and also the shortening of the dress, it starts off as like a choice for herself because this is almost like a cool battle look.
Yeah. And
then as the movie goes, it, instead of being like more of a cool battle look, we slowly just turn into like a constructed because of fill-in instance here.
Yeah.
Which tells her story, but like, I like this. This is the biggest change because this is the change she makes herself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, also side little funny bit that I like from this scene is while they're in the hallways, Fitch is in the bathroom watching YouTube videos on how to use a crossbow because he's split up because of upset stomach, which is really he's incompetent in. But he wants to do well.
I mean, he has to do well.
Yeah.
But also, like, out of all of the weapons that this family clearly has an arsenal.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, well, you're the crossbow guy. This is what you picked when you were a child, so you get to be the crossbow kid. You didn't bother to learn how to use it.
Well,
and also, like, there's other weapons that, like, do not require a manual to use, like maybe a knife.
So this makes sense for Fitch because, if we remember right, his wife Emily is the Ladomas of that pair. He's the one who's married into the family.
I still feel like I would have bothered to learn a crossbow. Like, if I married into a weird, kooky family that I was like, oh, you guys murder people. Okay, well, I'm going to learn how to use both, like, a lot of weapons.
Well, they described him as his character is a guy who is very comfortable with the lifestyle that he's grown, that he's been adopted into.
Yeah, I do say that there's a lot of sprinklings of, like, complacency with him. Like, he's just kind of there living, not really participating.
Yeah.
Which I can see, and I guess I understand, but, like, the crossbow feels almost a little bit too comedic at times. And then at other times you're like, okay, I get it.
Well, yes and no. I mean, it's a prop point up until, like, 5 more minutes into the movie, and then we never see it again.
That's true.
Yeah. And so, as Grace leaves the passage, she enters the hallway where the rest of the family is carrying the dead maid.
Yep.
And
just hauling her right on out.
Emily, from out of nowhere, comes in her coke-fueled excitement and begins shooting at everyone.
Whoops.
Yes. And
Coke.
As Grace is frantic in her running away, she enters the game room where Dan is just kind of walking around and says he's only there for a drink.
Yeah.
And what is on the table? Wild turkey.
Wild turkey.
Yeah. Apparently there was another scene that was cut that explained why the bottle was on the table. So.
Yeah, but not necessary.
Yeah.
We can all accept that this man probably drinks a great deal.
Yes, which is key to him and Emily's character.
Yes.
Because as far as we know, Alex is the sober of the 3 siblings.
Yes. Sober enough.
Yes. And honestly, Dan is my favorite character in this movie. He's the one I feel most sympathetic towards.
Yeah, he definitely...
He is the tragic hero or almost hero.
Yeah.
But other little side set note.
Mm-hmm.
You were talking about the beautiful candelabras.
There's so many freaking candles in this house.
There were only 5 candelabras, and they had to move them around constantly.
I hope there was someone who that was their only job.
Yes, I was so excited when you said that, just because, like, I can't wait to drop that.
And, like, especially if you're, like, a critical horror movie watcher where, like, you enjoy poking fun at sets or costumes or character choices like we do.
Yeah.
The amount of candles in this very flammable house is absurd.
Yeah.
And they do play on it later. Like, because the house does catch fire. But, like, there's so many candles that, like, it's not quite to the in-your-face joke level, but it is to the point where you're like, even a standard moviegoer would be like, why are there so many candles?
Actually thinking about it, because they're playing all this in an old-timey manner.
Yeah.
I think if I remember right, there's only a handful of, like, lamps.
Yeah, okay, but I see your point. But as someone who goes to a lot of old-timey houses, the jump from candles to gas was real fast.
Yeah.
People loved gas. And then the jump from gas to electricity, especially if you were rich, was a requirement. Because you were the only person in town who had magic light bulbs that turned on and off whenever you wanted.
You're the asshole who they tore up the street to get to.
Yes!
Yeah.
Yes, actually! And honestly, for a lot of them, putting in some kind of light wasn't, especially if you already had gas in your house, which, let's be real, if you're rich and in the Americas, you had gas in your house, it wasn't a big deal because they usually just ran the electricity through the gas pipes.
Oh.
So, like, it's not like, yes, they definitely would have, like, done a whole chandelier and been like, oh my god, look at my fancy lights. But, this house made a choice to be an all-candle family. This was a family-decided choice.
This sounds like a rich person's version of, like, what's the show? King of the Hill?
Yeah.
Well, we only use propane and propane accessories.
We only use candles and candle-based accessories in this house. Yes, that's what this family did. This family went, well, we worship Satan. We live in an old-timey house. I think it's only right and fitting that all of the time we only use candles. But we have a big-ass house, and I don't want to not be able to see my phone at any time, so can we just have a lot of them?
Well, I mean, they have smartphones now, so...
Yeah, why doesn't nobody pulling out their smartphone? I don't... Again,
because
this family made a conscious choice to be a candle-only and candle-only accessories family.
Might be important why they're not using their phones in a minute.
That's true.
So, Daniel explains that he likes Grace, and he had hoped that she would have made it, but...
What a nice guy.
Unfortunately, he has family duties.
Yeah, I mean, I feel ya, homie, but, like, weak sauce.
Yes and no at this point, because...
I think he's supposed to play more of the character who feels trapped and, like, didn't until this point take initiative in his own misfortune.
That's exactly who he is. Because at the very beginning, he's the one who ratted Helene's husband. Yeah.
So, like, I get it, but also, like, come on, dude. You could have done it.
He has more depth than any of the other characters.
He definitely does. Yeah. He definitely does.
And so he does give her a head start.
He gives her 10 whole seconds.
Which, in a house that's... it's a fair amount of time. Is
this adult seconds, or are these children seconds? Because children seconds go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
This is alcoholic drunk man seconds.
Oh, so she's got, like, hours.
Yeah, she's got some time.
I mean, if a butterfly goes by, she might be good for the rest of the day.
Yeah. And so, as he yells where she's at, we cut to Emily, who is coming down from the coke and popping some pills.
Because, what's a better, rage, murder-filled night than coke and pills?
Yeah. Whatever else she's done.
Well, so much.
And so, as Charity comes to see Dan drunk on the chair, she's pissed that he let her go. But she explains that she doesn't want to go back to where she came from. So she has a troubled past.
Woe is she. Murder and drugs is better.
Well, I mean, as far as we know, Charity's the most sober of...
Yeah, I guess.
She only takes... All we know is she's had some champagne and she takes a swig from Daniel's whiskey.
Yeah. Yeah. I do feel like a lot of the character quabbles that a general audience watcher would have with these characters could have been flushed out in, like, a slightly longer book or even like a multi-part series.
Yeah, I think you would appreciate this if it was more like a Stephen King book where they did some flashbacks or explained their little history. Whereas I like the little subtle nods because it adds to their character and it just makes the movie that more interesting rather than just be like, oh, it's cannon fodder. Because, like, going through the Friday the 13th.
Oh, yeah, fair. If you're comparing those.
Yeah, none of the characters have background. They're all just the sex. Oh, no. There's a couple that have backgrounds, but they never play on them. And that's the frustrating part, is because they are tying, and that's what I like about this, is that they are tying those little backgrounds in of, why this family is somewhat acting out of desperation, especially the newcomers, because Fitch has no clue how to use a crossbow, so out of desperation, he's gone to learn the videos.
Fair. I think you got a good point. I think mine and a lot of like a general watcher's complaints is because this movie's plot and story style are similar to what a Stephen King style horror could have come up with. Yeah. And Stephen King's works have always done such a diligent job of intertwining a backstory that is laid out enough that you don't have to put it together yourself. Yeah. But, like, it leaves enough gaps that, like, you could add to it. And I think a lot of people, and I am guilty of this for sure, have gotten used to that style of horror, especially, like, this genre of horror where it's horror, but, like, it's not too deep.
Yeah, it's not like where I showed you guys Poughkeepsie tapes.
Yeah, we're not that low.
Yeah, exactly.
This is still a general standard person watching.
It's a fun horror film because my mom even likes this movie. Yeah. My mom, who hates most horror films, likes this movie. Yeah. But yeah, so after everyone's convened, they begin scheming.
The scheming.
And this is where they're arguing of like why I think the candles are important and the lighting's important because they're arguing of like, well, we have security cameras. Why aren't we using those? And they're like, no, we play this the way Victor played it.
Yeah. I feel like maybe we should ask the demon whether or not he wants us to play by candlelight, but...
Well, we also learned that, I think it's a little later on. No, it is later on. I'll explain it later. There's a reason they don't ask the demon.
Fair. I mean, that's fair.
Yep. And so,
I feel like they've added rules to themselves. Yeah. You know what I mean? They've concocted extra rules where they're like, well, we better not risk it.
They've interpreted it.
Oh, yeah. This is like House Monopoly rules, where once you read the real rulebook, you're like, oh, we've been playing this wrong for generations.
Yeah, let's not stop.
Oh, this is the actual game is so much easier.
Yeah. And so, as they're discussing this, another servant enters, And Emily
shoots
her in the face with a crossbow, which Fitch had given to her.
To be fair, girl's got good aim. She's 2 headshots in, and nobody else has hit anything yet.
She has the most body counts for this whole movie.
She really does. And, like, granted, like, there are more creative deaths later on, but, like, gotta admit, the girl can aim. Even high off her ass, she can still hit it.
Yeah, and as the family gets pissed off at the other fuck-up, Aunt Helene is annoyed by the servant's death rattles and finishes her off with an axe. Cue Henry Zabowski. Because he has ruined that for me.
Of course he has. But also, like, this just solidifies that the aunt is by far my favorite character.
Oh, yeah. She is in another time and world than the rest of this family, and I love her. But for me, she's also the downfall, and I will explain that at my theory is at the end.
Okay.
So even after this, the family still continues to argue about shit.
Yeah, like you do.
And they just seem like they're stuck to an old tradition that they don't understand.
Definitely.
And they also mentioned that, like, the last time this even happened was the 80s. So
yeah, it's been a while. Everyone's rusty.
Again, where my time frame comes in, if this is 30 years later, we're in the early 2000s, no later than 2009.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Everyone's got Blackberries and flip phones.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the newest iPhones are there.
That's true. This family's rich. Everyone's got an iPhone 1.
Yeah.
And an iPod.
Oh god, I forgot that people had both back then.
The mini one was for exercise, and the bigger one was for music.
Yeah, see, I mean, I only had, like, the iPod, not classic, but the next iteration. The long,
skinny
slim
one.
one.
Yeah, a lot of people had that one. That was popular.
Yeah.
Came in colors.
Yes. I got it before it came in colors.
Ah, bummer, missed the train.
Yeah. And so now Grace has decided to fight back by getting an elephant rifle for herself and ammo.
They'll do it.
She looks like a total badass at this point.
She totally does. It's great.
And so as she tries to escape from the kitchen, Alex begins breaking traditions by trying to let her go by opening the back door and using security footage, which also cues the family that someone's watching.
Yeah.
As the butler enters the kitchen.
I like the butler.
I do too.
The butler feels like they found a serial killer and they're like, "You want to work for us?"
He's like Creed from The Office.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, just a bit.
Not a lot. Just a little bit.
Just enough. The directors had mentioned that this was the hardest location to find.
Yeah, okay, I can believe that.
And even when Grace is hiding, she feels strong. And this is because Weaving wanted to make Grace seem like a badass because she often found women in danger in, like, horror films to normally be whiny, which is very true.
A lot of crying, a lot of sniveling, or
covering the mouth.
Nonsense. Yeah, no, I like Grace's interpretation of, like, all right, I am hiding, but, like, I also have a lot of shots in an elephant rifle. Come at me, bro. Which
also makes me wonder, like, what her foster care was actually like, because she seems like, well, this shit's happening again.
Not necessarily because of her attitude, because I think that is just dependent on a person.
She's just an adaptable person.
She's an adaptable person. I do wonder what type of foster care taught her how to use an elephant rifle, though.
I mean,
That's my question. What foster house are you in that had an elephant rifle and a full sash of bullets, and you're like, yeah, I can pick that up whenever I need?
Well, it might be the only thing that's left.
That's true.
The rest of the family's strapped to the nines.
That's true.
And so, as she tries to kill the butler, the gun doesn't fire because it's only a display.
Oh, no, she knew how to use a real one, not a display one.
And the ammo's fake.
Oh, bummer.
And so, this part was actually kind of, not really ad-lib, but kind of planned at the last minute because they're like, well, what doesn't stop her from knocking the butler out with the gun?
That's a good question.
And going through the door.
You can use a gun as a weapon.
I think it was like one of the producers or one of the actors who's like, well, what if he had a knife?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So Butler grabs a knife and starts chasing after her.
Again, I am convinced that this butler was at one point a serial killer, and they were like, hey, do you want to be butler for a murder family? And he was
a bit shady.
Butler's real shady.
Yeah. And so, she bashes him in the head with a teapot.
I love it.
I do too, which, kudos for smashing that kind of teapot.
Yeah, seriously.
Good jobs on props, too.
It was the props in general in this have been spot on. Nothing feels too, placed and purposeful.
And that's because mainly they use practical effects.
Yes.
Which, I will preach this, practical effects, even if they've become a little dated,
they still look the best.
They're still better than the best CGI 10 years later.
Yeah, this is very true.
Yep. And so, after this, we actually get to see Alex's kind of true nature start to show, because the family comes in and he starts breaking their security system and begins to strangle his dad.
Yeah, finally taking control of his life. In a way.
Seeming like he wants to.
Yeah.
Alex is a complicated character.
That he is.
And so, after Dan knocks him out, they once again flip a coin.
Yeah.
So who gets the head? And Dan's like, I don't give a shit. Just take what side you're on. But Grace goes back to the dumbwaiter to hide, only to find that the last servant who begins to signal the family is there.
The only remaining servant.
Who is crushed by the dumbwaiter. Yeah,
I do question this part, because as architects, we do deal with the elevator world frequently enough. And I question how, did they rig this dumbwaiter themselves to be unsafe?
So, okay, here's a couple thoughts on that.
Is this a really old dumbwaiter?
That's my thoughts exactly, because I was watching a old Fassbinder film, and I always forget, how old elevators used to work.
Oh, yeah,
you just hop in this open chamber.
Bird cage?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not even, not the old ones, where it wasn't even, the bird cage, where it's just, a platform on a wheel.
Yes,
it was that kind. It's okay, I can see why safety measures came in place after this shit.
And real quick, too.
So that's why I think she got crushed, is that that dumbwaiter doesn't have safety stuff.
Yeah, this is a dumbwaiter that is pulley and weight lever.
Yeah,
not
exactly.
an actual... Because the new ones you can't do this.
Yeah.
And even the one in Home Alone, I don't think you could do this with.
No.
So okay, alright. Old-timey dumbwaiter, no one brought this house up to code, got it.
It's heritage site.
It's a heritage site. And also, now that I'm thinking about it, yeah, this family also, decided they were going to light their houses with candles and beeswax-based products. So, okay, they didn't update the dumbwaiter. Sure.
Exactly.
Okay.
Maybe there's very little electricity running in the house.
But they have an entire security system.
True.
Was a hamster in a closet running that bad boy?
This
whole room of hamsters.
The last turnspit dog is in that room.
The last single turnspit dog.
And so, real quick, the directors did mention, this was the hardest shoot to do because the size of the dumbwaiter and just, it closed, it closed slowly.
Yeah, dumbwaiters aren't fast. Even old-timey ones aren't. They're not. This is like being run over by a Zamboni. Would it hurt? Yes. Would it take a while? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so now we get back to the family in the family or waiting room. Yeah, one of the rooms.
Over there somewhere.
With Tony freaking out that Grace is taking them out one by one.
Oh no. Heaven forbid.
Let's point out, she is not.
No, it's their own family.
Emily has the most blood on her hands. She's taken out 2 servants. One died because of a faulty waiter. Or dumbwaiter. And that's the only 3 deaths we have so far.
Yeah, no.
Grace has done nothing, and none of the family has died at all yet.
That's true. Good point.
Yeah, exactly. Tony is blowing it out of proportion.
I understand his fear, though.
Yes.
She looks like she could murder them all.
Oh, yeah. Or at least the way she's still avoiding them.
That's true. That's true.
Which also this is where we learn from Helene that, why it's important that Alex comes back to the family, and why none of them can just consult LaBelle. Because she mentions that of the living members, the only one who has seen him sitting in his chair is Alex.
Yeah.
Which is the sign of the next head of the family.
It's a good point.
Yep.
But also, this also feels like a rule that they made up. and are just going with, and the demon guy's like, I didn't say that, but if you want to do that, okay.
He's like, all right, I'll play your game. And so at this point, Grace jumps from the second floor down to the garden and heads to the goat shed. Yeah. I actually have questions about her jumping because this is not a standard residential unit that's like 10 foot finished floor to finished floor. And
even that would hurt potentially if you did it wrong.
Yeah.
This is a mansion. We can assume, and this is old-timey mansion, so there's room for hot air up there.
Yeah, so it's probably 15 feet,
I think that would be the lowest number I'd go with. Yeah, that's a long jump.
Yeah.
Maybe her wedding dress, like Mary Poppins, lowers her to the ground.
Yeah, that's at least...
It's like Princess Peach.
That's over 2 micas.
That's a lot of micas.
My friend's 6'8". This is who I'm referencing. He's an ent.
So tall.
Yes.
But yeah, like, maybe she Princess Peaches her way down because she's wearing a dress.
I don't
Maybe
know.
her wedding dress still maintains the bell shape and, like, lowers her chin.
I mean...
That or her cankles hurt real bad.
She's wearing a T-length dress,
That's
so...
true. That's not enough.
It's not a Princess Peach dress.
Not a Princess Peach anymore. Not floor length.
Yeah, so also on this, I reached out to one of my friends who is not rich currently, but is in, socializes with many wealthy people.
Has rich friends.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
How many of them that he knew own goats?
Yeah, that's actually a good question. Goats feel like,
farm-esque.
Yeah.
It makes sense in the satanic sense, but
like, also, like, goats?
It seems like sheep would be a better option because...
Also, like, especially, like, if you're into the whole satanic movies like we are, you would recognize that chickens, alligators, bulls, sheep, small children, all acceptable sacrifices.
Well, in movies. In movies, children...
In movies.
In movies, children are accepted
in the real world, a lot of other things on top of that list.
In real Satanism, children are not an acceptable sacrifice. They should not be harmed at all.
In the religion of Satanism, you are correct.
Yes.
Do no harm, but like...
In the Christian view of Satanism,
yes.
That it fits.
In the theatrical world of Satanism and sacrificial bullshit, is it alive? Can you murder it? Sacrifice.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I feel like we could have gone with a lot of other, like, more realistic options here other than goats.
Exactly. I will say, though, because he talked about some of the people he knows where they've repurposed portions of their land for farm.
Okay, yeah. I know people like that.
For tax purposes.
I understand. You do have to have something on it farmy.
So goats do make a little bit of sense.
Goats are like a hipster bullshit thing, though, to farm.
Yes.
In a way. Like, unless you've got a goat market in your area.
Well, I mean, we have a goat market in our area.
We have a hipster bullshit town and you know it.
We have a lot of Indian restaurants.
We do have a lot
we have demand for goat in the area.
We have demand for goat meat, and also, like, we have multiple people in this town who actively, successfully sell a shit ton of bars of handmade soap.
Yeah.
Like, we live in a hipster town. Let's be real.
I'm okay with it.
I am too.
I am too.
But that would explain our goat population.
Yes. And so, actually, yeah, the way I take back from Guess Who has goats on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I love the Indian takeout here. It's delicious. But, like, I don't necessarily think the goat population is standard across the Midwest.
Goat's just a weird fitting for this movie. Because we analyze stuff too intensely sometimes. And
also, like, I think we're also used to, like, questioning agricultural stuff in general. Because, like, we can drive down the road 15 minutes and see emus and be like, oh, emu farm.
Yeah, I was walking in the neighborhood next to me not, like, a year ago. And I was just walking around and random barn in the middle of the suburb.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Welcome to the Midwest.
Yeah.
I think, like, 30 minutes away is a farm that sells, like, that raises buffalo. Like, full on buffalo. Yeah. And, like, that's not weird here. That's just how it be.
Yeah. So, anyway, back to the movie. Enough about our weird hipster town.
Enough about our hipster goats.
So, in this shed... Georgie, the missing child who no one gives a shit about.
We do not give any shits about the children.
Has shown up and shoots Grace in the hand, who then proceeds to knock him the fuck out like it is a MMA fight.
Yes, I am a little sad she didn't then lift Georgie over her head and toss him into the goat pit.
Children are terrifying. There is a whole reason there is
It's a genre.
Children who kill.
There is. Also, the Georgie in general, just from the start, like, none of these kids were set up to be, like, remotely likable. Like, you spend enough time to be like, creepy children. Great.
One creepy child. The other one's asleep pretty much the whole movie.
I mean, he could be creepy. He's just taking a nap right now.
Yes. So,
heavy sleeper.
Grace is scared by a goat who knocks her into the goat pit.
Yeah, I also question the goat pit. Like, I have friends and family who have been in the farming business. I don't remember there being goat pits.
Don't you just generally burn the corpses?
Normally I think if you're running your farm as best you can, you spend as little time with just random dead goats as possible. I think your goal is to sell those suckers.
Well, remember, they are a satanic rich family, so they need a pit to hide the bodies.
That's true. You know, they can't just, like, sell a leg of goat to the local butcher shop. Yeah. No.
Because also we find out that Amelie's husband is in the pit.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I do appreciate the family's minimal creativism to be like, oh, we have a person. Mm-hmm. We can't just bury it on our giant property. We better hide his dead body in the pit of other dead creatures. They'll never find him there.
Never. Because human bones look so much like goat bones.
There is a lot of instances of people thinking they find people bones and then it's just like a dog bone or a deer bone. But that's mostly just because a lot of people don't spend a lot of time analyzing real bones.
Looking at bones?
Yeah, like there's a difference between knowing pictures of people skeletons in like full context and finding a dead bone on the ground and being like, oh, it's a bone.
True. Side note, this is the only set that was built for the movie. The goat pit.
I like the goat pit because, like, it does have a different feel. Mm-hmm. Like, you know what I mean?
Well, also that it also holds a different part of this movie for me because, as Grace escapes the pit, this, for me, felt like the most horror bit of the movie. Yes, it does. And it was probably some of Weaving's best acting in this part.
Oh, I totally agree. This part was great.
She said it was the hardest part to shoot, as, like, the nail was edited. Mm-hmm. Like, the nail was CGI.
Fair.
Which...
I can understand why they'd choose that.
Yeah, but, like, it's just it's the biggest horror part to, like, the goofy bullshit murder that's happened before.
True. And also, I think for general horror audiences, there's a couple of, like, specific injuries that a lot of people, like, have a gut reaction to. Things being poked into eyes is one of them. Things being poked into mouths, definitely one of them. Yep. And then things going through hands is definitely, like, on that list.
Hands and feet. Any extremity.
Yeah, but specifically hands and feet, I think, are higher on the list than, like, an arm or shoulder wound.
Yeah.
Just because, like, those we see a lot in, like, fantasy and action movies, like...
War movies.
War movies in general. People get shot in the shoulders all the time.
Ouch, something bit me.
Yeah. And so, like, I applaud her for adding that level of, like... true horror film feeling and acting to having a nail through her hand. Because that really did heighten this movie from, like you said, the goofy murder quest that it has been so far. It's just like a fun gore movie up until this point. And then once we get to the nail part, even though we've got the pit of goats next to it, even the pit of goats feels a little comedic just because there's so many goats in there. Yeah. It's a lot of goats, guys. Come on. But the nail part, like, really solidifies this as, like, okay, definitely a little bit more horror than...
Yep. Yeah. And so, as she flees the goat pit.
The goat pit.
Charity sees her and informs the butler who takes to the road.
Pause. Can I please have a metal band named the Goat Pit?
There might be one.
I'm gonna Google that later. That'd be a dope metal name.
The Goat Pit.
Goat Pit!
I'd go see it. I'd actually probably go see them. And so, as she flees, Grace escapes through the property through a fence, and yet again her dress is torn slightly.
Going down, just taking it off bit by bit.
This time, just slightly to give clue for the butler.
The butler! Who again, there's something sketchy about this butler. Because this man is trying real hard.
Oh yeah.
This man is dedicated.
And so, after Grace escapes, she's ignored by some rich asshole neighbors.
Which... from their point of view, this is a random, scary, demon-looking lady on the highway. But also, like, it's like a two-way street here. Well, I can see why they would be spooked.
So I think there's a couple things to this. And it comes in the next scene where they're all freaking out.
Yeah.
Where Frank has one of the best lines in the movie is, "We're all fucking fucked."
It's a solid line.
And so some of the family starts looking for LaBelle, but they also mention that they're not the only families that he's done this to.
True.
So,
but also would you want to be murder neighbors to your other demon families, or should you spread out across the United States?
I mean,
I feel like the normal spoopy movie satanic answer is to spread out. But now that we've started to see more...
But they're all so filthy rich that...
I mean, rich people, I guess, are going to live next to... you're going to have a rich neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to, well, I don't know. I say that, and then, I remember my scope trips where it's, normal neighborhood, mansion, normal neighborhood. So, I don't know.
I think this is, the ultra mega rich who,
community.
Don't live anywhere near the suburbs.
Yeah, they're fully removed. Okay,
yeah.
I guess that would make sense for having a goat pit too. You don't want a normal neighbor to walk into your goat pit.
No, exactly.
You want your rich neighbor to walk into your goat pit.
Well, they're like, oh, so this is how you keep your goat pit.
Oh, you have goat pit? I have a chicken pit.
Let's compare notes. What's cheaper? Huh?
Do you put cedar shavings on top of your goat pit to keep the smell down, or do you use pine?
To be fair, the family's not taking care of this shit.
No, that's the butler's job. And I'm convinced that man swims in the goat pit.
And so, from this, the fuck-ups are now sent to the goat pit to dispose of the servants that are still in the house.
Yeah, we can't wait till tomorrow to do that.
Yeah, so, why I think the importance in the little details in this movie, because the ones who are clearly substance addicts.
Yes. They're trapped to the family.
Daniel. They're both first off, they're siblings.
Yes.
So they're born into the family. They're born with the curse.
They are, yeah. Okay, by that logic, yes.
Daniel's an alcoholic, and Emily's a drug fiend.
She is all the drugs.
Yeah, as far as we know.
Yes.
So it kind of makes sense why they're the generation that's trying to move away from tradition. Yeah.
I also can see how between the three kids, there's all three of them feel trapped in their own sins.
Yeah.
Whereas, the one tried to leave, didn't do it, had to come back. And then the two feel like they can't leave and they're going to make their own escape.
Yeah.
In their, without leaving.
Well, and so the other thing too, I think, Emily has children. So the family is potentially going to continue. I think David and Charity probably don't have kids just because, and this is all speculation on my side.
Oh, sure, that's how this movie works.
It's because he probably just doesn't want the family line to continue with him. He doesn't want to be the cause of more death.
I can see that logic, yeah.
Daniel is probably the most complicated and most interesting side character in this whole movie.
Yeah.
Because he even brings up, what's even the point of this curse? Why are we following it to the T? No one knows how this curse actually works. We're just assuming.
He's the only one who's questioning the house rules, like the goat pit.
But at the same time, his issue is his loyalty to his family, as seen in the first opening scene.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, after this, they find Georgie in there. Who cares?
Yeah, no one gives a fuck about this child.
Butler catches up to Grace, who she ends up beating his ass and strangling him.
He does try to run her over with a car.
True. But she still
beats him up.
And then takes the car and leaves, but like Michael Myers or Jason, the butler gets up.
The butler is insane. Minus the aunt. The aunt is by far my favorite character just in general. But the butler's a close second.
Yeah.
He might be also a demon.
No.
But, a fun demon butler. He's not, a good demon. He's a low-ranking one. But he's there for the goat pit.
Are you wanting this to be Black Butler?
A little bit.
Of course you are. And so, after Grace gets away, she steals the car and calls remote services instead of calling 911.
Yeah.
And the car has miraculously been reported stolen in the last 2 minutes.
I feel like that was real fast.
Yeah, real fast.
Or the car's always been stolen, and again, Butler's shady as hell.
That would make sense.
That would make more sense.
Yeah. And so, the butler might be a demon because he catches up with the car pretty damn quick and darts Grace.
Yeah, again, butlers, there's something going on there.
Yeah. Which ends in a crash because the butler is too prideful.
Yeah.
He's confident that he's caught her as she wakes up and knocks the car over the road.
Yeah, I mean, this is why if you're going to kidnap people, don't turn your radio up real loud. You need to be able to hear them wake up in the back seat.
Yeah. And so, as Grace wakes up from the crash, she tries fleeing in the woods and just accidentally runs into Daniel.
Oops.
Oopsies. Where he again explains to Grace that he likes her, but he cares for his family, even despite them being a horrible bunch.
Yeah, okay.
Which he proceeds to knock her out because Tony is nearby.
Gotta do something.
I feel if Tony hadn't been there, Daniel would have let her go.
Probably.
Yeah.
I could see that.
Yeah. And so, after this point, they take her back to the house.
Time for some good old-fashioned rituals.
Which they do mention that this has not been like any of the other rituals they participated in where they've killed goats. So, their run with Satanism isn't just like, oh, LaBelle requests something special every now and then. They're fully in.
Oh, yeah, but, again, the rules to the actual demon have gotten, I think, construed over time.
Yeah.
And so I have, my personal favorite hunch is that someone in the family was really into this whole sacrifice thing and took it to a new level. And then the rest of the family was like, well, if we don't do it, we don't know what's going to happen. Better just keep sacrificing goats all the time.
Until someone gets married. Then it's the most dangerous game.
And then in reality, the demon is like, oh, more goats.
Yep.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
And so, we also learned that, Alex left because he met Grace.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And she was too good and not who he wanted to be. Or,
alright.
It's who he wanted to pretend to be. It's my thought right now.
Yeah.
So, this is where we learned that LaBelle wants occasionally more from the family as they don their robes and explain to Grace what the ritual is going to do as Tony leaves the box on the table in front of LaBelle's chair. Which is interesting too, because LaBelle is technically the head of the family, chair-wise.
That's true.
Because it's his chair.
It is his chair.
Yeah. And so, out of her drug state, Grace awakens on the most stereotypically cheesy piece of furniture.
It could have been pulled directly from Indiana Jones.
A pentagram table filled with taxidermy as thunder storms outside.
It's delightful. I love it.
And the family ritual begins. And, side note, they actually had to get the Latin translated for the MMPA. I mean, it makes sense.
There are folk out there who speak Latin. You gotta be out there for them.
Exactly. And so, before thrusting the knife, they all start throwing up because the wine that they drank at the beginning has been poisoned in a very Clue-like twist.
He is very murder mystery, and I approve greatly.
David is the one who has poisoned them with hydrochloric acid.
Yeah, okay, they briefly mentioned that he's done his research and, it won't kill them.
But they'll shit weird for a week.
Okay, no. That's not how that works. You have burned their esophagus, sir.
Yeah, it's like fucking drinking bleach.
I think bleach might have been kinder. They would have been dead.
Maybe. It's still...
Yeah, no, this is terrible, sir.
It's
there are better poisons out there.
It's us overlooking it.
Yes.
Or looking too far into it.
It is, but also I feel like you're meant to kind of react to the poisoning. Because if it had just been like, bleh, then it wouldn't have been as dramatic as blood dripping down the chin sort of thing. But at the same time, we have to tie everything together.
Yeah.
I'm here for it. I love it. I love a good poisoning murder, but this one feels a little less like a, oops, they're gonna live because I didn't put enough in, and more of like a, I wanted to burn them.
That is so damn cheesy. I hate it. So, after this, Daniel is letting her go.
Yes.
He is finally taking a stand.
He's gonna do it. He's gonna be his own man.
Charity ends up shooting him, and Grace runs away, only to be caught by the mother-in-law who,
The archery mother-in-law.
Yeah, well, okay, before this, Tony's there, and she bashes him in the face with the lantern, which starts a fire.
Starts a fire, because, this house wasn't going to go up in flames at all.
Yeah, Alex finds David dying, not know who actually shot him.
Yep.
The mother-in-law now tries killing Grace.
Yep, with her bow and arrow.
Who Alex finds her, or walks in on her, bashing her face in.
Yeah.
And I also love this scene, because the little bit of hope we've had for this couple is...
Oh, it's gone.
It's gone.
It is crushed.
Specifically in Grace's reaction, because as
Yes.
Alex tries to touch her, she pulls away.
Yes.
And that is that's the key turn. We have that little hope that there's potentially something, and it's just gone. Yes.
I also think, though, that this is a little bit two-sided, because for some of us watching this, it's like I hope they don't run away together. I hope that she is like, no, you and your crazy-ass family tried to kill me, get the hell out. And that's because that's the logical response.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a horror romance movie, but no, she chose correctly.
Yeah. Well, at this point, Alex shows his true colors.
Yes, he does.
The darkness inside him. He turns on Grace, knocks her out, and takes her back to the table.
Back to the table.
Yeah. And side note, this fire is taking hella long.
Yeah, okay. Did you have to take a fire class when you were doing architecture shit?
I'm sure we did something with it.
We took a class, I think. Maybe not a whole class, but we had multiple lessons on it where we had to watch fires spread throughout houses and stuff. And I don't know if maybe old-timey houses are protected by the special demon, and that's why this is taking so long. But boy,
I would think they're more flammable because everything old
is made out of wood and linen and stuff, right?
And the lacquer is poisonous, so
that's true. So this house is either hella big and half of it's on fire and they're on the other half, which is possible.
Yeah. Or
this house is protected and that's why they can use candles for all eternity on everything.
Yep. And so as the remaining family begins to converge, they're on I think it's the main dining table now.
Yeah, they moved location.
They all gather round. Hail Satan!
Time for sacrifices.
Where Alex botches it and stabs her in the shoulder. Again, not as curdling as the hand.
Yeah, the shoulder injuries are not that big a deal in horror movies.
As the curtains open and they act like vampires.
The sun, my skin is burning.
Where everything seems fine until Helena still wants to kill Grace. And now the explosions start as Run, Run, Run plays in the back.
It's like ticks in a microwave. They're just...
I do want to point out that all of this was practical effects.
Yeah.
They had 3 setups for when when Emily and her kids die.
Mm-hmm.
What they described as a meat cannon.
Meat cannon.
that shot up against a board that's splattered
Ooh.
Into the room.
Okay.
For the reactions of people exploding next to them, a meat rifle was used.
Meat rifle.
And
Cannons,
then
rifles.
the full frontal blow-ups was a rig.
Yeah. I mean,
it's fun to see used.
I would say for a horror movie that enjoys the humor of overdone gore, this was perfect. Yeah. It was over the top, it was unnecessary, but it was gross. It had that good squishy feeling.
Oh yeah.
It was good.
Again, practical effects are better.
Practical effects are good.
And so Grace is laughing as they all die.
As she should.
Finally, Alex tries to get back Grace. And she says, I want a divorce. Which, for me, why?
Oh no, if you just wait a few more minutes, won't he die and you can just inherit all this shit?
Exactly. She has inherited the estate.
Yeah. Without inheriting the weird murder abilities.
Yeah.
She's won.
Well, maybe. So, also at this point, O'Brien, the guy who's played Daniel, he told the directors he was going to go full Nick Cage at this scene. Love it.
Go for it.
He did fantastic with it.
Yes, this was the best from him, I think.
And so, as he dies, LaBelle appears in the chair.
He.
And as we know, LaBelle only appears to the new head of family.
Yep.
So, as the credits, or as Grace leaves, a rock rendition of Here Comes the Bride plays as she miraculously pulls a cigarette and lighter from somewhere on her person.
No idea where.
And takes a drag.
Because she deserves it, goddammit.
Yes. So, I actually think this ending is a change to her luck.
Yes.
It's good luck, because now, in my interpretation of the movie, she is head of the house.
I think so. I would agree with that statement.
Because unless she's thrown in jail.
Which, depending on how the police interpret Goat Pit, maybe, but also, I could see how the police would be like, wow, you poor victim. It's a miracle you didn't also get infected with the weird popping disease. Yeah. And explode.
Yep. Also, the police officers show up pretty damn quick.
Yeah, but also, if all of the neighbors are also into satanic ritual bullshit, then I bet you the police are also in on the gig.
There's a satanic lifeline. Help! I've exploded and I can't reassemble. So, outside of that, though, I do have one other theory about this movie. And the way it ended the way it did. Because originally, the ending was different. Okay. Grace was killed.
Yeah, okay, alright, fine.
Radio Silence and the producers didn't like the ending, and so they wrote a 12-page ending that was whittled down. So for me, the explosions started after Aunt Helene tries to kill Grace with an axe. Yes. And my thought is maybe the reason they die is because
the game's over.
Well, not necessarily that. The game's over, but they broke their own rules.
They did break their own rules.
So I think that because they failed to live up to the end of their bargain when Helene tried killing Grace, is when LaBelle stepped in. I think because at that point she would have died. Yeah. Otherwise, if the family had accepted the loss that she had survived the night, I think everyone would have lived.
I do too. I think, like we've said throughout this whole thing, the family has made up rules based off of, I think, probably one or two crazy people in the family's ideas of what the rules should be, and they've twisted them to fit whatever crazy bullshit they want. Yeah. And so, yeah, I think I agree. I think the family probably could, because the rules didn't say, you have to win. Yeah. You have to try to win.
Yeah, you have, exactly how Alex says it. If you don't try, or if you don't play at all,
you lose.
Then everyone dies.
Yeah. So I think they broke their own rules. Maybe not knowingly, but they did break their own rules because they didn't bother writing any of this stuff down, apparently. And yeah, I think now that she's head of house, she knows what's up. Yeah. She knows full well what's up. And there's nothing stopping her from living a full, wealthy life by herself.
Yep. I think the Ladalmas family ends with her.
I would like to think so. She seems smart enough to not try and pull this shit on someone else.
Yeah, exactly. And so, after the movie, I went through a little bit of very light research because it's been swamped with work.
It has been a week.
It's been a month so far.
Yeah, it's been multiple weeks.
Yeah. So, my question of who is LaBelle?
Yes, okay. What's your theory?
So, my first interpretation, once I rewatched the movie, I thought of the demon Baal. Bael, not Bail.
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
So, for those who don't know, Baal appears in the Lesser Key of Solomon, the Pseudo-Marenkia Demonium, and the Dictionnaire Infernal. Okay. He is a hoarsely voiced king with the power to make men invisible and rules over 66 legions of demons.
Ooh, fancy.
He is described as having the form of a cat, toad, and man, and some combination of other shapes in the Lesser Key of Solomon, whereas in the other 2 books, he simultaneously has the head of a cat, toad, and humans.
Cat, toad, and humans. Wow, so spoopy.
Spoopy.
Right.
So that was my initial thought, but based off what he does, according to the lore and the brief stuff I looked up, he doesn't really fit the book.
No. Yeah, I would agree with that.
And as we know from horror films and exorcism documentaries, a lot of demons will lie about who they are.
Of course they will.
So
that's the whole point.
Throwing him off by giving him another demon's name, despite the similarities in the name, I think he is actually Clonic, who is a goetic demon from the Secrets of Solomon, the Grimoire Vernum, and also the Dictionary Infernal. Clonic is a demon of wealth, and according to Wikipedia, because again, not a whole lot of time to do deep dives, I did this like last night.
Yes.
In the past, Clonic's known to be, he's the, Clonic is the demon of wealth, and according to Wikipedia, he is known to be obedient to his summoners, but only to those who show him proper respect. Again, tying into them not respecting the rules of the game.
I think that fits very nicely.
Another explanation is Labelle just means lease in French.
Yes, it does, which I like. I think a pun is always fun.
Yes.
The other thing to note is the spelling is close to, I'm going to butcher it, Belhala, which it comes from the old Hebrew Bible, which got translated down into Satan.
Okay.
Just the one. Just the big man himself. But it's a possibility. I don't like it as much as, like, the whole full family tree hierarchy bullshit. But, yes. The other thing to keep in mind is there is always room for a new guy at the table of Crossroad Demons.
Yeah.
Because, as we've seen with a lot of, like, especially if you like this genre of
supernatural.
Supernatural. But I'll give them credit where credit's due. They did add a lot of fun, unnecessary lore to the whole demon construct. So having more than just the one Crossroad Demon, yeah, why frickin' not?
Yeah.
I don't mind a newcomer, and like I wouldn't mind if they chose to keep him his own character and his own story arc, because then we could play with this guy doing this sort of stuff to other people. Maybe in Europe or
but
more old-timey family who's been doing it longer.
At the same time, I don't know. I like it as a standalone movie. I
do too.
I like all like the little building they do, and just enough to make the characters memorable compared to a lot of other similar films.
Yeah.
Same with another movie Samara Weaving was in, part of the Sugi collection, because he suggested the Babysitter to me as well.
Oh, sure. Yeah, the Babysitter.
Which, again, all of those characters are stereotypes, but they're memorable because they have more personality than just like, I'm a horny teenager.
Yeah, there's definitely more to this one than others of its same genre.
Yeah. No, I mean, honestly, we've spent 2 hours on this movie.
It's one of our favorites.
It's an hour and a half long.
It's a good movie.
But, I mean, I honestly, this is probably one of the best horror comedies I've seen in a while.
Yeah.
And I know your issues with it, and I talked to my buddy Rick about it too the other night, and he wasn't a fan of it because it he got it, but it just didn't hit him right. And again, comedy's subjective.
Fair. Yeah, and especially horror comedy. There's rankings to it.
Yeah.
Real hard, yeah.
This is one of the comedies that I can highly recommend to watch by yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Which, again, I watch most movies by myself.
This is one of the few that I ended up watching by myself. The dear husband did not get to participate. Darn. He was too busy. But I do plan on having him watch it, even if he does watch it by himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, everything about it, I think, is spot on. The comedy is just enough. And it's a subtle comedy. It's not like slapstick.
No, it is a delicate comedy.
Yeah. And even, the horror, like, it's light on the horror, I will say that.
Yeah, it's not over the top visual. It's more of a concept. But
I think that's fitting for it. Whereas, like, Zombieland tried doing a very in-between.
I think that hit a different funny bone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Whereas this is much more of that dark comedy that I love.
Yes.
And, yeah, I mean, I don't know what else really to say about this movie. I mean, we've talked about the setting. We talked about, well, the acting is fantastic in it.
Yeah, the acting was great.
I mean, everyone just fits their character.
Yeah. I think this movie was really good. I think a lot of the problems it suffered from was over-critique when it came out, and then it just wasn't on a lot of people's radars when it hit theaters.
Yeah, because I actually had a hard time finding this on DVD now.
Yeah, I think unfortunately this is one of the ones that, like, got forgotten.
Yeah.
It didn't quite have the same presence in theaters that I think it would have when it hit DVD. And
yeah, it's not like a Knives Out because
Knives Out advertised itself heavy-handedly.
Yeah, and this one, like, you give the premise, and I can see why people don't want to go see it, because
I think also this movie came out around the same time that we had been burned by a lot of, like, not very good horror movies.
Yeah, I think it was around the same time, like, Happy Death Day came out, which
there was a whole, like, wave for a while of movies that were advertised as horror and horror comedy that they weren't.
Yeah, or horror ones that just didn't
hit right.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people got put off of going at least to theaters to see it. And then unfortunately, because this movie, while it is really good, it doesn't necessarily put a pin in your mind mentally if you haven't seen it.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people just forgot.
Yeah, no, I think so too, because I mean, it wasn't even on my radar until Sugi brought it to my attention.
I completely forgotten it existed.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Which is too bad, because this movie's good. I recommend it. Yeah, I mean,
honestly, at the end, I can't not recommend this movie. Yeah. Or if that's double negative. I highly recommend this movie.
Yeah.
For anyone who is remotely interested in horror comedy that's just slight on the cheese.
It's a tiny bit cheese, but it's not so much that it's a joke.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a fantastic movie.
Yeah, I completely agree. So, but, anywho, this has been The Good, the Bad, and the Weird.
Thanks for listening.
Peace, and check out SugiLogic. I can't thank him enough.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Happy Valentine's Day.